Okay, it looks like we're on and ready to go. Welcome to our City Council meeting, City Councilors, staff, and members of the public. If you are an attendee tonight and you have called in, I see a couple phone numbers on there. If you've called in and you want to speak, you need to hit *9 in order to be recognized as somebody who can raise their hand, and then I can call on you. With that being said, we have had some technical difficulties with some of our members just being able to stay on and not get kicked off, internet problems. So if people do get kicked off, please, we'll try to hold the meeting until you can rejoin us. But, these things happen. So with that, Catherine, could you take roll call?
Okay, Willman. Willman.
Jonathan.
Yes. Charlie, you got to unmute yourself.
I was trying, Mr. Mayor. You weren't letting me.
Sorry.
I'm here.
Voorhees.
Here.
Pope.
Here.
Godis.
Here.
Davis. Davis.
Am I there? It just keeps saying Jonathan won't let me unmute myself.
I didn't mute at all.
Just keep saying that. I don't know. Maybe it's a slow connection.
Deb.
I'm not muting you, I promise.
You did for a second. I'm here. Thanks.
Okay.
Hershey.
Virtually present.
Okay. We'll now go and I'll say, lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item number 5, agenda changes and conflicts. Looks like item B on the consent agenda, the award of a bid 2020-19 water, sewer, and roadway construction contract for 22nd Street will be considered as a separate item that's been asked to be pulled from the consent agenda. And item number 15, which is resolution 2020-24. This is temporarily suspends portions of our code, our Glenwood Springs Municipal Code during the COVID-19 local disaster emergency. It will be moved to be considered at the July 2nd due to an error in the language. With that, are there any conflicts of interest tonight from anybody? No? Okay, seeing everybody nod in the negative. We'll now go to citizens appearing before council. These are for items that are not on the agenda. So if you look through the agenda and you see that it's already mentioned, please reserve your comments for that time. If you want to make comments now and it turns out that those are on the agenda, we'll take the comments in this area. So please try to reserve them for the appropriate time. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and please give your name and address. With that, members of the public, I see one hand. Colin Wilhelm, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council members. I was calling in today to voice my support regarding the ordinance requiring that citizens and people traveling through and around Glenwood Springs wear masks when in public. In Garfield County, we have 10 ICU beds, and those beds will be full up if we have even 2 people that are needed to have to go into on a COVID emergency. And those beds are not just for COVID-19. cases. They're for every case, appendicitis, car accidents, everything like that. And if we have to deal with this virus in a second stage, in a second spike, it would be very detrimental to us. Wearing masks is probably it is by far the least intrusive way to help protect the public in general from spreading of COVID-19 and the coronavirus. There are numerous studies out there that show that the water droplets, the COVID-19 virus needs water droplets to disperse throughout the population, and that wearing a mask keeps those water droplets from getting through the mask and getting onto somebody else. So when you look at it from a public safety standpoint, it helps us and helps our first responders and our medical professionals to keep those 10 ICU beds that we have available, so that way we can treat people with the necessary injuries of daily life that we already go through. And also from a legal standpoint, the constitutionality of it is there in the sense that a Supreme Court decision would look at whether there's a necessary public interest, which there is in protecting people, and whether it's the least intrusive means necessary to create the mask usage. And wearing a mask is by far least intrusive. There's no studies that show that people aren't going shopping or going out because they're wearing a mask. In fact, you walk anywhere downtown and you see restaurants the outside are full of people sitting down there with their masks next to them for when they get up and go use the restroom. So I applaud the council for continuing with this ordinance. And I would just urge everybody to continue with it so that way we can get through this without a second spike. Thank you very much. That's all that I have to say.
Sorry, guys. I was trying to move to where I had better internet. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Then let me plug back in real quick. Apologies. Okay. Is there anybody else from the public who would like to comment on items not appearing for the agenda? Thank you for that, Colin. All right. Seeing none, I will bring it back to council for council comments, update on boards and commissions. I would, if you don't mind, I would like to start off this evening. Usually I don't, but one of the things that we were talking about and have been talking about is doing a listening session. We, obviously it's a difficult time right now with some of the protests that are happening and COVID, and it's got a lot of people concerned and afraid. And so we'll be having a listening session June 30th at 5:30 p.m. We encourage as many people in the public, citizens of Glenwood Springs, to attend. The purpose of this meeting is to increase understanding on both sides of the issues, whatever those issues are, be it economic, health, public health, police, Black Lives Matter, whatever it is that you want us to know and understand. We always have this with public comment, but sometimes it's not in a form that everybody can participate in. We want everybody to understand the state, county, and local decision-making authority as it relates to these public health orders. And we also want everybody to know that we're all on the same side. We might have different means or different ideas on how to accomplish these things, but we're all on the same side of this. We need to work together to succeed. The participants at this listening session to be there as a resource. So if people ask questions or if they want to have statements heard and people can help clarify or shed light on these issues, the participants will be Sarah Brainerd, who's with Garfield County Public Health. I'll be there, as I would encourage all city council people to be there in a listening role. Dr. David Brooks, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Valley View Hospital. Beatriz Soto, who is the Director of Nuestra Tierra. It's a Latino outreach organization that's fairly new, and so we're really excited to have her. Angie Anderson, CEO of Glenwood Springs Chamber Resort Association. Steve Beckley, John Bosco, the Hot Springs Pool. Aaron Zolinsky, who's a co-owner of Treads. Summer Shatner with Imagine Glenwood and the Planning Commissioner. And we'll have a facilitator who is Janess Brewer will be there as well. I think also I have, another quick comment that a lot of, we've been hearing a lot, and we've, did the face mask ordinance. And, I think one of the things that got a lot of people confused is the word indefinitely. And indefinitely doesn't mean forever and ever, and nothing can change anything. It seems like a lot of people didn't read below the fold and really take the time to see what we're trying to do. And so I put that on us, quite honestly. And I think that the word indefinitely should go away, and that we should reevaluate that. So for that reason, I'd like to ask a few questions of my fellow counselors, if you could indulge me here real quickly. Just 3 quick questions that could speak to this is, 1, is anybody aware of any agency or recommending body of scientists like the CDC, the WHO, the CDPHE, or our own Garfield County Public Health that is now strongly recommending that people wear face masks as a mean, that is now not recommending that people wear face masks as a mean of controlling the spread of COVID-19? Has anybody heard that these organizations have changed their recommendations? All right, seeing none. Has anybody aware of a growing body of peer-reviewed scientific literature that suggests that masks are not helpful in containing the spread of COVID-19? Seeing none. Is anybody aware of a new vaccine or herd immunity that's been achieved since we last addressed this issue? Seeing none of that, I guess I would just like to, and if we have to do this every couple of weeks because people want us to reevaluate this, and I think that's fine, I would like to just take a quick voice vote and see if people are still okay, and to get rid of indefinitely as part of my motion would be to affirm that we are still, at least for the next 2 weeks, until we have this listening session, until we have the next meeting, still committed to a face mask ordinance for at least until July 2nd. I know Councilor Davis expressed and Charlie Willman, I think it's more Charlie, expressed his concern over the word indefinitely the last time. So that'd be my motion, is that we get rid of indefinitely since there is no new science or recommendations, and that we have another vote on July 2nd about this. Would there be a second for that?
I'll second that.
Thank
That
you.
we revisit it on the 2nd of July.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved by myself and seconded by Shelley. Is there any further conversation about this? I see a lot of hands up, and I think they're all up for council comments. So if you want to just raise a hand up and speak. Charlie, go ahead.
I just got a comment. I can't, if you're doing a voice vote, I couldn't unmute myself, so.
Oh, okay. I believe I've unmuted everybody. So
My hand raises for council comments.
I gotcha. Thanks. So with that being said, Catherine, could you, well, let's just do a voice vote. All in favor signify by saying, Paula? Oh, sorry. Did you have a comment?
Whoops.
I'm sorry.
Out.
Sorry, I'm just not having an opportunity to unmute myself easily.
Alyssa, I am unmuted. I clicked unmute all on everybody. I don't know if you can take that away from me. Steve, are you able to unmute yourself? Steve Davis? Okay, so how about everybody raise their hand? Go ahead, Tony.
Just real quick, indefinitely does mean forever. And I would support putting this on the July 2nd. I'd make a motion right now to lift it, but I doubt I would have a second. So thank you.
Okay. So
By the motion again?
the motion is that we take away the previous council direction, which was indefinitely until these factors had changed, which were included in Rick's motion 2 weeks ago, and that we re-examine this at our July. We only have the face mask ordinance on until July 2nd, and then we can re-examine it in the similar manner that we did this evening. And that's it. Just, it's not indefinitely, and it's until July 2nd.
Thanks.
Okay. Alyssa, just for public, Alyssa is our technical person. If you can figure out why Steve can't unmute himself.
Can I ask for clarity, Jonathan?
Yeah,
Just since a lot of times when we put a date on something like that, it means that it would end on July 2nd if we don't vote on it. That is not how I'm interpreting this motion.
no, go ahead, Shelley.
Well, I'm interpreting that we're going to revisit it. If we don't, it would stay as it is.
That's correct. That would be the intent of my motion, is that we revisit it July 2nd, take another vote to reaffirm. But if we don't revisit it, or the internet goes down and we can't have a meeting, that it doesn't get revoked. That would be my
Okay.
intention.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Oh, I see Steve can talk.
Aye.
So all in favor of this motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. All right. Thank you for allowing me for those comments. Now we will get to everybody else. We have Charlie, then Shelley, then Paula, then Tony, then Rick.
Okay, just a few things and Steve Davis, correct if I get this wrong. There was a downtown development meeting this past week. And one of the issues that came up that I want to bring up to council is they're trying to get a food truck in what's called the Bethel lot. And the city staff and the county health department are really working diligently to get that working, but there's been several hangups. And I'm wondering whether, and it might be something for Deborah to weigh in on as well, but should we look at whether or not, I don't think we have separate regulations for food trucks. And if we don't, should we come up with some regulations which might make that process more fluid? I don't want to say easier, but more fluid. And I know that everybody's done a great job, the city staff and the county health department on that. They've done a great job. Deborah doesn't want to comment. Oh.
I would, sure, we're happy to look into anything. I think we'd have to work with Carl's team. I did not attend that DDA meeting and I haven't heard this yet. So I think all I can say is we're happy to look into anything council wants us to look into.
I just think, we talk too often about doing more food trucks and allowing that and activate the downtown and 6th Street and maybe other places in the community. And we certainly want to make sure all the health requirements are there, but we don't want to make it so onerous that it makes it difficult for people to do that. We also have to be, obviously concerned about how the impact may be on brick and mortar businesses. But I just think there ought to be, we got to look at that and see if there's a set of regs we could come up with it. At least somebody go and say, okay, I gotta check these 10 boxes and I can be a food truck. So that's one thing. The second thing I have, there was some discussion. They're going to be kiosks. The DDA agreed, and Matt's Langhorse's office is building these. The DDA is going to pay for them. They're going to put several kiosks around. I think there's one already up dealing with the bridge history, and there's another one going up, I believe, over on the north side of the pedestrian bridge. But they're going to get, I think, 2 or 3 other ones, and they're going to try to get those in various locations for a variety of reasons, but kind of a wayfinding thing. So everybody's pretty excited about that and looks good. The last thing as part of the DDA is there was some discussion about downtown events, and as hopefully things open up more, I know that I had some discussions with some of the DDA members before, and I know that the Parks Department is really limited on funds, but I think we had to look at whether we're opening Glenwood Springs, and we talked about some different concepts. And Deborah, I didn't know whether or not if we did something like that now, if we could get that into that county collaboration agreement we're talking about later tonight or not, or is that money just what we spent today?
Okay. I know that money is, and there's not a lot of clarity around it, which is why I wanted to take more time and just get it approved tonight and think about it more. It is for COVID response, direct COVID response expenses through the end of the year. So I think Carl, when I heard, I talked to Dola today, and they essentially said, we're not going to advise you on what those expenses can be. Your attorney will need to make that call.
Okay, all right. I just didn't, I'm not sure I fully understand it, so we'll talk about that later. I don't take time now. I do think we should try as much as we can within our budget limits to support some kind of concept. And I think one of the thoughts that I mentioned was maybe almost like having Strawberry Day booths, but have them spread around the city and not in one location. So we don't have people congregating, and that almost forces people to move back and forth past the shops and stuff that we have, again, about downtown, North Glenwood, anywhere else where we can help activate the retail. So just something to consider. And I know Pat Miller and oh, great, Brian Smith we're talking about at the DDA meeting, and they're going to hopefully be looking at that. So I encourage that. Two other comments. First of all, I really want to congratulate the staff and the good job they've done. I know there's several of them, and if I start naming, I'll miss somebody. The outdoor dining downtown is just, in my view, is remarkable. And the stuff they're doing in Cooper and other places, and as much as we can expand that to help every restaurant or other retail establishment that wants to have something outdoor to help get people activated. I just really want to express my appreciation for what a good job that is done. And frankly, given what I see under the bridge, I almost want to say we ought to try to make that permanent, because I like the activation that we're seeing down there. My last comment is more of a question. Are we going to be meeting in person?
Charlie, we discussed this at the last meeting. I think it's hard. It's almost like we either have to meet virtually or we have to meet all together. The in-between is just, and Alyssa can probably explain why, the in-between is very, very difficult. So I think we should wait and see what the next variance is, what the next level of safer at home is. But right now, we just cannot do it in a hybrid situation.
No, and I'm not trying to just belittle the point. I thought that the way the governor's stuff came out last week, that was going to allow for bigger groups. And I know Steve Davis held up a sign saying no, so I don't think he's ready to do that either. And we're having electronic problems, and it just is cumbersome. So I'll ask, and you can say, wait, and I can handle that. Okay, thank you very much.
Just so you know, I think it's mostly complicated by the 6 feet of distance, and then trying to do a hybrid where the public is Zooming and you're Zooming, but you're all in the room together. It's just a beast.
I do understand, and I appreciate it. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Charlie. Next up is Shelley.
Okay, thanks. I have a few things to run through, so I'll try to go through fairly quickly. First of all, commission updates. Start off with the River Commission. They are going to have a modified Riverfest cleanup this year instead of their usual Riverfest, which takes place on one day. They're going to do a whole week from August 1st, August 9th, and teams can sign up and do certain areas of river cleanup. So anyone who's interested in that, it's great to see the riverbanks get cleaned up, and they can watch for that and get signed up. They're also looking forward to doing revisiting the riparian code, I think at our July 16th meeting. And tomorrow, River Commission is hosting a Facebook Live event with the mayor to talk about the river ecosystems and how we as a city can help to keep those healthy. So please look forward to that. And if you can get on Facebook and watch that tomorrow at, what time is that? Do you know, Jonathan? Is it 11?
It's 11:30.
11:30. Okay. And then on to Transportation Commission. They've met a couple times now virtually. They've worked on the project priority list, which will come back to council and kind of prioritize that recommendations from the commission. We also had a discussion of the MOVE study, and discuss the concept. One of the concepts in the MOVE study, which we might see tonight, is to explore using the RAFTA corridor just for buses, just for transit operations occasionally, and probably just BRT, not the regular local buses. So, and then with that would go trail enhancements, maybe enhance the river trail and move it closer to the river in sections where it's not at the river. So they had a discussion about that. There were mixed feelings, but some people really liked it and saw it as a way to improve our transit. Others not as much. So I think that'll be a discussion to have for town, but it also brought up a discussion about where's the best place for BRT stations. And I don't know how much the MOVE study is looking into the optimal place for BRT stations. One of the members brought up the idea of what about the Safeway location being kind of a mixed use development with a transit station that would back right on, it fronts on Grand, but it backs right on that rail corridor. Would that be an optimum place? So just something to think about, planting seeds for that. The other thing they talked about was the concept of more working at home, more people working at home, more businesses having employees work at home, and what that can do to help our traffic on Grand Avenue and throughout town and commuters. And I know they were very supportive of that and looking into that, not sure about what the role of the city might be. So that's something that I'm hoping we can talk more about as a city and maybe as a council, and even with Deborah and with our HR department, have kind of a board and policy meeting. You know, what's that going to look like for the city going into the future? And what are the implications for traffic and for our employees and, you know, for any different areas? It could affect a lot of things. So just something to put on for our future, maybe later in the summer, that I'm hoping we can have a conversation about. Housing Commission met last week. They are still interested in doing a small housing project. And we had that land discussion for city lands. So they were curious about what the status of that was. I think the staff was going to go study the city properties and maybe come back with 30 or so properties that might be available to use for housing or might be good options. So they're hoping to hear back on what the status is on that. I think Hannah was going to check into that. Tomorrow is the CC4CA, that's the Climate Action Statewide Collaborative Group. It's their board retreat. So Paula and I will be in that meeting for 4 hours tomorrow morning, just discussing collaboration across the state and what the policy objectives are for that group for 2021. Let's see. Okay, and then my next questions, the Arts and Culture Board has not met since we haven't been able to meet in person. So they're hoping to meet next month. So my only other comments are, I'm wondering, this is a question for Deborah, do we have a work session planned yet for homelessness? We were going to have the speaker come.
I'm sorry, for what?
For homelessness?
I don't believe Debbie has found a date yet. I will double check with her. If she did, I missed it.
Okay, and she might be waiting for us to throw out date options, good options. So yeah, let's connect there and see if we can get that set up. And then I'd also like to say, we've kind of put Coffee with Council on hold for the past few months. If possible, I would really love to see that get started again. I think the few that we had seemed to have great attendance, really good discussions. So it would be great, even if we have to do that virtually, it'd be great to see that started up again.
I would agree with that, Shelley.
Okay, thanks. And then the last comment I had was just a shout out to our Parks Department personnel. I live right across the street from the Doc Holliday Linwood Cemetery trailhead, and a crew came out here earlier this week and cleaned it all up, cleaned off the flagstone, and it really looks nice. So just a shout out to them. They did an awesome job, and it looks great. So thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. Appreciate that. Paula, I'm going to unmute you, and I hope I can actually do it. Hold on. Give it a try.
How's that? Awesome.
Yes.
Woohoo! As with Shelley, I have a few things, so I'll try to go quickly. First of all, it's great to see the landscaping happening on the 6th Street roundabout. Looking forward to see that finished up and where we go with it. As far as making our local businesses down there happy. I know that was really important to them, that are to the downtown, that entryway into Glenwood looks good, and it's good to see that work. So speaking of businesses downtown and such, and the recent DOLA grant with going through the county, and speaking with Deborah and the shares that the share of the money that potentially Glenwood could get, I would love for the council to find a time to discuss what else we can do, similar to Charlie's ask earlier, but what can we do? Do we look at another round of grants to our local businesses to help them through this economic impact? Do we look at something that we can provide our citizens? I wouldn't want to leave us high and dry if we need that money, if there's a return to or a spike in COVID and we have to do things again that we did in March and April. But I do think it's worth exploring another round of grants from the city on how we could do that. And maybe that's a work session. And Deborah and I talked about it briefly, but we kind of wanted to bring it before the whole council on that kind of opportunity. Just what we need to do is help our community and help our economy back on its feet. And I think that one was deeply appreciated. And speaking of opening the economy, the tourism board is now advertising and spending money, encouraging visitors who expressed an interest in coming to town to now return to town and take advantage of the certificates that are being handed out. So if somebody's coming to town and spending 2 nights at a hotel in the middle of the week, then they will get this $100 to also spend in the community, which I think is great. So they're working hard on opening the doors to, to tell our tourist community that we'd welcome them back. On that note, I'm just happy that we're keeping our face masks in place and encouraging people to distance and that type of thing as we welcome these out-of-town visitors. They're super important to us. It's also important to take care of our community. I want our kids back in their classrooms this fall. I want our businesses to stay open. So whatever we can do for both of those, I just want to say that, for my opinion, that's a great thing that we've got both kind of going on. So yeah, the tourism board is working hard on bringing people back to town. That's great. And then we also had a kind of return meeting to the Recovery Detox Continuum group. A huge turnout at the Zoom meeting this afternoon. Everybody was kind of catching up on where things were at between all the different people participating in this continuum. And if I remember right, it's over 50 different representatives, from mental health to police to fire, EMTs. We've got quite a group from throughout the county. And we realize now, with the economic change and things, we're going to have to look at, we're going to have to revisit the funding part of this. It's going to be a different story, but nobody wants this to fall through the cracks. So the continuum will continue. And those are my big things. And thank you again to the city staff. You guys are doing amazing for what we're going through right now.
All right. Thank you very much, Paula. Appreciate it. Tony, go ahead. I have unmuted you, I promise. Have you unmuted you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I could be in that commercial. I just noticed after, when Colin Wilhelm was speaking, there was another citizen, Michael, who's last name I can't pronounce, Casapo. I bet it's his lovely wife, Monica, who wanted to speak. I was wondering if I could just say nothing, but if you could just let her briefly talk because her hand was up during public comment. Thank you. And I have nothing else.
Thanks, Tony. And you know, I know it's tough for everybody to get here on time, but once we move past this section, you know, I think we need to not continue to go past that. So I think just for the integrity of the meeting, not to silence anybody. And if Monica or Michael or whomever would like to submit a comment in writing, or obviously call any of us up at any time, we would love to hear that comment either personally or through writing. So thanks. Rick.
Yeah, good evening, council, members of the public. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. I just wanted to touch on the 4G grants that Paula mentioned and to say that it looks like a unmitigated success. There were 130 businesses that got $2,273 each. And I think it's just a great example of the community coming together, using resources from the Downtown Development Authority. They kicked in 100,000. The city kicked in 200,000 from moving a little money around from employee housing, but also through under the sponsorship of the Financial Advisory Board. So it's just a big shout out to Charlie for all the work that he did in helping the chamber. And a big shout out to Jen for sort of the operational details of all of that. And it's just good to see the city coming together in a transparent way, trying to put money back into the economy. There was a comment that, you know, it might be a sip of water in terms of the overall needs that are out there, but I think it's a sip of water. And so I want to thank all the businesses that applied. I think everybody knew that they had equal footing and that nobody could go to the head of the line in terms of the money that was given out. So I think success. I also just wanted to mention, and you know, I'm not sure if Deborah has any comments or Charlie has any comments on the 4G grant, but yeah, I think we need to look at the money that we will be getting and how best to distribute that as a council, and welcome, you know, any public opinion on that too, as long as it's even Steven and everybody has an equal chance to get that money. Just to touch on what Shelley said, people working at home more and more. Chamber board also mentioned that the real estate market in Glenwood Springs is particularly hot now, that people are able to work from home. And some of the corporate structures are realizing that they don't need to bring everybody into one building. And so there's a lot of movement here in town. And so what better way to celebrate that than the expansion of fiber optic throughout the city? I mean, I just think it's almost serendipitous that this is happening at a time when, you know, it'll be a major selling point to people to have reliable, not different rates and spiked rate service in their home. 1G, you can't beat that. I also noticed today while I was out, the street striping is really looking good. You know, there's nothing that makes a town, you know, sort of shine than having nice white lines and nice yellow lines so people can tell where they're going. So I was appreciative of that. And then the last is that we've had some discussions. We put away some money. Last time we met, I think $15,000 to look at some hillside cleanup. And I know that we're still working on that. I've had conversations with Deborah about some joint partnerships. And so that idea is very much alive and moving forward. And that's it. Thank you for the time.
Thanks, Rick. Appreciate it. You know, I did forget to mention that I attended an airport commission meeting this morning, and we will be having, I believe, either the first or second meeting in August, a joint airport board commission or airport commission city council meeting. And I think just globally getting back to where we're having these boards and commissions come before us at a minimum of once a year. And then obviously things like Financial Advisory Board or some of the higher touch ones, especially with the MOVES study. Shelley, you mentioned the Transportation Commission. I think it would be beneficial to meet with them a couple times a year as we go through this $500,000 study. And you know, one of the questions of the airport commission, I had a commissioner ask me, hey, my term is up. Do you guys still want me? And you know, we have had a conversation, I believe, on, you know, do we, in the past, we've just reappointed people if there haven't been other readily apparent people in the queue or who have applied. And so, you know, I'd love to get a sense from folks if that's still the direction that we wanted to go. You know, sometimes people are there for 3, 4, 5 terms, and our code allows only for 2 terms, unless there's an exceptional circumstances where a member is deemed, and Carl can probably clear up like the exact language, but I think my intent is, I'm getting it close and you can nod or not, but if the member is deemed essential and irreplaceable, then we can elect to continue to appoint that person. And I think that a lot of these commissions have had, you know, good interest, but when there's not competing interest, we just continue to reappoint the same people. And I guess I would suggest maybe we keep those positions, we allow those positions to expire and keep them vacant long enough so that that commission and that we on council and other people in the community can actually, you know, be intentional and recruit for those new commission and board members, so we can get new blood on those commissions and get new ideas and new changes. So what, you know, maybe at their next council meeting, it's kind of too hard, I think, during council comments to gain consensus on something like this. So maybe on the next agenda, Catherine, we could put that as a placeholder just to have a philosophical conversation on what we want to do with expiring terms of board commissions. I think there's enough people and enough vacancies on those boards. We probably just need to get on top of that in general. So thank you for allowing me back in to make that last comment that I had forgotten the first time. And now we will move on to, are there any other comments? Sorry, let me ask that just real quick. All right, seeing none. We'll now move on to the consent agenda, and all matters under consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion and vote. The titles will not be read aloud. There will be no separate discussion of these items. Please, if you're looking at an old agenda, understand that item B has been removed. So with that, could I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda? Charlie. I'm frantically clicking. There you go.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
A
Moved by Charlie, seconded by Shelley. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Or raise your hand. Okay. Let the record reflect that it is unanimous hands that went up. Just in case I saw that wrong, are there any dissenting votes to approve the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. All right, let's take that item number B, award bid of 2020-19 water, sewer, and roadway construction contract for 22nd Street. Who would like to? Mr. Langhorse.
Mr. Godis. Thank you for the opportunity to put this in front of you guys. The City of Glow Springs went out for a bid on the 22nd Street water, sewer, and roadway project. This project has kind of been in the works since about 2007. It was originally designed in 2007, really only pertained to the sanitary sewer line, a little road reconstruction. 2008 hit, funding kind of went downhill, as we all know, in 2008, 2009. The project kind of fell off the wayside. It came back in about 2016 when we realized that the sewer is becoming a problem. We've had 2 or 3 backup claims that Sursa has had to pay for, and the city's had to deal with on that street because it's a 4-inch sewer line. We also have a 2-inch galvanized, basically, water line out there. It doesn't provide for any fire flow or a fire hydrant on the end of that 600-foot road. So the city put together basically this money last year for $400,000 out of the street tax and $250,000 out of water and sewer tax for a combined total of about $900,000 to get this stretch of road fixed for water, sewer, sidewalks, some curb and gutters changes, and the street rebuilds, and just get it all done, which is what we're trying to do in a lot of these projects, is just whole infrastructure repair within a street. So COVID hit. We had some reevaluations of street tax money, as you probably remember from about a month ago. we actually dropped $200,000 out of the street tax. We left the 250 in for water and sewer. So we had now had a total budget of $700,000. Jessica and Terry in the engineering department's basically been running this project. Jessica designed it. Jessica did the specs for it. Jessica did the bidding for it, which was an invitation to bid process. 5 contractors did bid on the project, and I wasn't very hopeful that we would see anybody in the $700,000 range. We were already kind of planning on tweaking things if we had to get the money down to where we could do the project in some form, because it does need to be done. Luckily for us, through the competitive bidding process, we've done quite well. We had 5 bids ranging from $697,000 up to $852,000, 2 of the low bids being within about $10,000 of each other, and the other bids kind of jumped about 10%, 15% above that. So we had really 2 kind of bids that were really close to each other through the process. And since it is an invitation to bid, basically the only thing that we're allowed to really look at with an invitation to bid per the procurement code is who's the low bidder. And Ewing Trucking came in, they're based out of Edwards, Colorado. They came in at the $697,965, just eking out Gould Construction by almost exactly $10,000. But according to the procurement process, we are to move forward with the invitation to bid process of awarding it to Ewing Trucking out of Edwards. And just let everybody know that everybody who is on the bid has to pre-qualify before they're even allowed to bid. So Heil came in, Johnson came in, United, Ewing Trucking, and Gould. Prior to them even being allowed to put a bid in, they have to pre-qualified as a viable contractor for this type of project. In Ewing Construction, we checked all the references. I kind of back-checked a few other references on a different way. And they did get good recommendations from everybody we spoke to. So it's still staff's recommendation. I know this has been pulled off the consent agenda, that we move forward with the procurement process of invitation to bid with awarding the contract to Ewing Construction for $697,965.05. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate it. Looks like I have a hand up from Steve Davis. I have unmuted you. Let's see if you can unmute you. Fantastic. Yes.
No, I did it. You know, I had made the request to bring this off the consent agenda for a conversation, at least in light of the shrinking of our local economy as a result of COVID. This bid was within $10,000 of a local Glenwood Springs contractor. And I thought we should have the conversation about whether we wanted to keep that $750,000 in the city of Glenwood Springs or let it, for that amount, let it go outside the city. I understand that we used to have a local preference in place that would have, I believe, given that contract to Gould Construction. And about 6 months ago, I think it was 6 months ago, we decided to remove the local preference from our guidelines so that in hopes of getting more bids. And so obviously we are getting more bids and that has achieved our goal. However, we have a unique condition that we're living under these days and probably will be in the foreseeable future. We're all struggling and so I just thought we should pull it off and at least have the conversation about whether we should give any leeway to that or not.
Thank you, Steve. I see a couple hands up. I see Charlie and Rick, and I guess I would like to say is if we're going to have a conversation about this specific contract award, then let's try to keep it focused on this specific project with this contract. I think a larger conversation, Steve, is absolutely warranted about local preference and what that means, what that might look like, how it might differ from the last time it was done, what has been achieved, what has not been achieved. So I'm very willing to have that, but I think I see Charlie and Rick's hand. And so if we want to get into the whole local preference conversation, we can, but the agenda title for this is specific to here. So if we could maybe keep those comments focused on this bid, I think it'd be a little more honoring to the agenda. With that said, go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I agree with Steve's comments but we did get rid of the local preference for exactly that reason. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that we should put this as an agenda item for a later meeting. Given the fact that the bid complies with our code, I think we need to follow our own code and our own and how things are done, and feel tough that we got a local contract's a little bit off, but he is, and so we're going to need to go with the low bid. I would move to approve awarding the bid to UE Trucking in the amount of $697,965.05.
I would second that.
It's been moved by Charlie and seconded by Rick. Paul, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to be a part of the discussion, and I understand what Steve is saying, and I think I would have also said, let's at least discuss this as a council, and I think I would have done it from the viewpoint of discussing it for a future discussion and something we should put on the agenda. So I understand what you're saying, Jonathan, as well. I feel like 6 months ago we made a decision. I know we're in a different economic time, and I know it's impacting us locally. So I do hope that we look at that in the future, and maybe even the next council meeting, because it's important. But at this point in time, we have directed our staff on what we wanted 6 months ago, and I'd like to see us at least through this project, give it to Ewing, and then reconsider what we really want to do as far as what we're looking at economic impact for our community.
Thanks, Paul. All right, we have a motion by Charlie and a second by Rick. Any other further conversation? All right, Catherine. Sorry, Tony, did I see your hand? Go ahead.
Are you going to take public comment on this or not?
Yeah. If the public wants to comment on the award of this bid, I would just ask the public that they keep their comments, again, specific to the award of this bid for this project, and not comment on the overall local preference, because that it sounds like it's going to be on a very soon future agenda. So was that your question, Tony, or was that a suggestion? Or okay. Oh, yeah, I guess we did take a motion already. I see Monica Wolney still has their hand up, and Mark Gould. So Monica, you've had your hand up for a while. Would you like to speak on this topic?
Yes, hi, Mr. Goetz and Council. In regards to what we're doing with this construction project, and I've overlooked it, and we're going with a company out of Edwards when Goetz Construction is a local company. And what I don't understand is why are we not going with local? I believe that, we should keep it local and not go into, they were not far off from the other company in Edwards, and them being local, I believe that we should support them. On another issue, I was not late. I was ignored in public comments, and I would like to go back to public comments maybe at the end of this meeting, just so I can speak.
Okay, thank you, Monica. Mark Gould.
Okay, so I would just like to clarify that there was an addendum number 2 in the contract that clarified that the city did not have to take the low responsive bidder. And so it was in addendum number 2, and I understand where you're going, and it's, you guys get to do what you want to do, but what I'm telling you is that addendum number 2 clearly gives you the ability to do what's in the best interest of Glenwood Springs. Gould Construction has been around for 40 years. We've done work in the city of Glenwood Springs for about 37 of those years. And we care about each and every citizen. So when we're on a job, we care about the traffic control, we care about the people, we care about the businesses that we're inconveniencing. And we have seen outside contractors come into Glenwood Springs and not care. So I understand you've got to do what you've got to do. I get that, but I'm just want you to understand that when we do work for you, we're a partner, we're a team member with the council, with the city, and with the citizens. And so we understand we're an inconvenience to the citizens as we're rebuilding a project. And we try to do our very best to take care of those citizens. And what I'm saying to you is that addendum number 2 said exactly that you don't have to take low bidder. It's clear in the addendum, in this contract, that you have the ability to do whatever you think is best. And if what you think is best is giving it to a contractor for $9,900 less in a valley who doesn't spend money in our valley, you get to do that. That's what you get to do tonight, and I appreciate you listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gold. We appreciate those comments. I have 2 other hands up, April and then Bart. April, will you please give your full name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
It's April Sarabia, 1073 Park West Drive.
Hi, April.
Hi. My comment is, why could we not give the option to Gould Construction to either come in and meet the other outside bid, or at least try to come down to around the same, closer to their bid number, so that way we can keep the business local? And that's it.
Thank you, April. And, I'm going to actually ask, usually we don't go back and forth during these comments, but I'm going to ask our city attorney, Carl Hanlon, or Matt Langhorst to comment on why we can't or we don't do that contractually. Go ahead, Carl.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A series of documents that are put together in a bid package. And on a competitive bid, those are sealed bids. It's not, which is different than like a request for proposal where there is the option to negotiate those prices and who you're working with. So there is a set of plans that are bid off of a series of addendum, and I'm actually looking at addendum number 2, and I don't see the exact language, but it's very similar to the method of award in the larger bid that Mr. Gould is referring to, which is lowest responsible bidder in the best interests of the city. And so that's the criteria by which people bid the projects. So thinking about it from the standpoint of everybody who bids the project, that was what they looked at as the method of award, right? So from our standpoint, in kind of doing a clean procurement process, we're going to present you guys with those bidders who were responsive, met all the qualifications, including a pre-qual, and deliver up what those numbers looked like. From the staff standpoint, that's really where our job ends, if you will, is delivering that up to you. But it's because it is a competitive process with sealed bids is why it doesn't become open to negotiation at the end. And that's in fairness to everybody who bid on the project. It could be that we'd have 3 local contractors, and then you would be left with the situation, are you just picking your favorite local? So in the absence of specific rules regarding local preference, it's very difficult because you have no criteria by which to make that determination that you're going to award to this local or somebody who's not local, or maybe between 2 locals. We don't have anything in the code currently for you to rely on to be able to do that.
Thank you. I thought that was an important point, just to educate people on why we can't treat it like we would if we bid out, a roofing project or our own personal fence or anything like that. So thank you for that, Carl. Bart, please give your full name, address, and you have 3 minutes. Bart, if you need, you can unmute yourself by going to the bottom left-hand corner and clicking on the mute button or unmute button. Okay, Bart, I will give you a couple more seconds to figure it out. I believe I've unmuted you. The bottom left, there's a mute button on your screen. There you
Can you hear
go.
me now?
I can hear you now, Bart. Yeah, absolutely.
My name is Bart Ewing with Ewing Trucking. We have been in business for 39 years, family-run business. Very high integrity on what we do. We are very well qualified for this project. Would like to have the opportunity to work with the town to show them what we can do. And we would buy all of our materials, pipe and bedding, and we have a local contractor to do the asphalt. So we are buying locally from the city of Glenwood and surrounding in the county there. So we would really love the opportunity to prove ourselves and show you that we are a good fit for this project.
Thank you, Mr. Ewing. Appreciate it. And thank you for submitting the time you took to submit your bid as well. All right, I will, any other comments from the public? Okay, I will bring it back to council for further discussion. We have a motion by Charlie and a second by Rick on the table. Thank you, whoever, Tony, that asked for us to have public comment. That was a good catch. Shelley, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to say I'm pretty uncomfortable with this whole conversation. I feel like we have a very well spelled out bid process. I do have a question about the addendum number 2 that was mentioned. Maybe Matt can speak to that a little bit. But as far as comment goes, you know, we did do away with the local preference, and we do not have that on the books right now. Whether or not we want to add that back, that's a conversation for another day. But right now we have a good bid process that's put together by our procurement department, and we need to honor that. And I'm not comfortable with even any local contractor coming to council and saying, well, I wasn't low bid, but I want the project anyway, because our bid process is about us as a town being fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. And I realize this was not a big difference in cost, but we do have a low bidder on the job that met all the qualifications. I think if we award this bid just based on personal preference, we're setting a dangerous precedent, and we lose all credibility in our bidding process. And the whole point of getting rid of the local preference was that we could get more bids. And we've gotten a few bids on the latest projects that are actually under our engineers' estimates. That hadn't happened in quite a while for the city. So I think it's important that we are fiscally responsible to our taxpayers. We take the bid, we honor our bid process, and we award the bid to Ewing. They're a regional company. They're located within, I think it's 48 miles of the city. So, they're still in the area. So that's my feeling for it. I don't know if Matt can speak a little bit to that addendum number 2 that was mentioned earlier, just so that I can understand that a little better.
And I want to actually start with the last thing you just said there, that Ewing Construction is 48.3 miles away from the city of Glenwood Springs City Hall, which is a designation of the old 45-mile radius.
Very close.
City could have picked 50 miles and they'd be within it, and they'd have local preference also. So that's a point of discussion that we need to have at the next meeting. You know, the addenda number 2, I'll read it to you. The bids will be evaluated using low bid, but having a well thought out turnover and schedule will be critical in the success of the project. That's what that line says. Let me read you the second line.
That's it. Okay.
The city has the right to choose a contractor that serves the best interest of the public. If you read the ITB, the invitation to bid, they always say in them, award of this contract will be made to the lowest responsible vendor whose offer will be the most advantageous to the city, per bid language. And that's in there to make sure if there's any oddities between bids, you know, we've already pre-qualified somebody, but something goes awry in the bidding process, and we look at it and go, this is horrible for us. You know, they're saying it's going to be 700 days to complete the 600 feet. You know, we can look at those things and it kind of gives you guys a little bit of an out on the conversation, and Carl can bid it or chime in on that. But we basically award invitations of bids to the low bidder as long as they're responsive, responsible, and available and capable of doing the project. And I think that your point of it's slightly dangerous to say we no longer have local preference, but we want to move towards that direction to hire an extremely qualified contractor. I have no problem with Gould Construction. They are doing a $4 million project for us right now up on Cedar Crest, and they're amazing. I have no problem with them anyway, but we need to stick with our procurement process. And if you guys want to talk about that at a later date, great. Let's have that conversation. But unless Carl has some other thoughts about how this language is, it still leaves with using low bid, but having a well thought out plan is critical. It doesn't say having a well thought out plan is the defining factor for us choosing you. And both of them had a well thought out plan. So it's kind of 6 to 1/2 dozen to the other on that.
Yeah, I would just
Thank you, Matt.
I would just chime in that if there was something in that bid package that popped out with either one of these or any of the 5, then we'd be having a different conversation. But what Matt pointed out is really accurate. Finding a technical way to kind of that may or may not be feel completely okay to manipulate the bids is something that we try very hard not to do in the bid process, because fairness in the bid process is really what gets us good prices overall. And so from a bidder's perspective, certainty is the most important thing to get them to bid on a project. And so if we want to reestablish local preference rules, whatever those are, it's like in land use. If you have certainty in your rules, it makes it much easier for you to come into a situation and say, I'm going to bid on this project or I'm not, if there is certainty in how the rules are applied and what the outcomes would be if you do bid.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And I would just close with, again, restate my appeal to council that let's keep credibility in our process and honor the low bid on this project.
Thanks, Shelley. Counselor Davis, you are unmuted on my end. And I just muted you again. There you go.
All right. Well, the reason I pulled the lid off that can of worms was merely to have a conversation.
Steve, could you hold on one second? Hey, Counselor Hershey. Oh, sorry. Thanks. I just want to make sure you're around. It's an important conversation. Go ahead, Steve.
I was just saying, I thought it was a good conversation. I thought we should have the conversation. I'm not really suggesting that we institute the local preference in our ordinance. I read addenda 2, the sentence in its entirety as a sentence is the city has the right to choose a contractor that serves the best interest of the public. And so I wanted to have the conversation. We've had it. I'm okay. You guys are going to vote here in just a second and tell the public what's in their best interest. So thanks.
And hopefully so are you. All right, Rick.
Yeah, I just like to add a little nuance to the question of local economics, and that is, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess would be the people doing the work, whether they be for Gould or the other firm in gypsum, probably don't live in Glenwood because they can't afford to live in Glenwood. But I'm thinking that they'll probably spend a great amount of their paychecks in Glenwood since we're still a regional area. So in some ways, to say that one's local and one's not, 43 miles away, certainly, you know, we've got the Egypt area over there in Gypsum and Eagle with the big Costco store, but most of the shopping is going to happen in Glenwood Springs for cars, for clothing, for, just a whole variety of different expenditures. So I can't, say that one's going to be more local than the other, with the exception, of course, that the management of the two firms differs by locale. But the bulk of the economic impact, the paychecks, I believe would be almost identical, but I don't know that for sure. So please don't quote me out there in the public. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. I guess I'll just say one last thing in response to one of the commenters, April Sabara. I just want to say, April, the reason we don't bid shop and use the low bid to then go to our preferred contractor and say, here's the lowest we can get it for, you were 10,000 off, you want another bite at the apple, is because that contractor, Ewing Trucking, would probably never bid a project with us again. I have a neighbor 2 doors down that just got this beautiful roof put on their house. I mean, this did a fantastic job. But if my neighbor Ron went to this company and said, hey, I need a bid, and that they took the time, they measured it out, they took the effort to do all of this, and they just used that in order to bid shop and to take it around to different people and say, here's the lowest I got, you need to beat that. That's really not, I don't think the company that ended up getting that roof, which again did a fantastic job, would ever end up wanting to work for that person again. And we just can't afford as a city to be perceived as bid shopping and undercutting people, so that we always go with the lowest, with the preferred vendor, which is Gould, because they're local. If that's who's considered a preferred vendor, I'm not saying they are a preferred vendor. But then 6 months or 6 years from now, we won't have anybody bid on any of our projects because they know they're just wasting their time. And then we just have one person, one company bidding, and then we probably don't get the best process for the citizens and the taxpayers. And I think that's what we all have to struggle with, is what is the best use of our time, energy, and taxpayer money over the long term. So go ahead, Mr. Langhorse. Your hand's up. There you go.
I'm glad you kind of counteracted your statement there. We don't have preferred vendors in the city of Glenwood Springs. We have contractors that we like. We have contractors that we know can do the work. Others come in, we get recommendations for them. When what Bart was saying is very important, and I don't think he quite got to the full point, was he's still going to buy those materials out of our gravel pits, not in Glenwood Springs, from vendors that are going to supply pipe, not in Glenwood Springs, but we get the benefit of it because we get prices and it's being spent in our local economy. He has a majority, from what I hear, of his employees live on this side of the canyon. He buys his trucks from our local dealerships. So we have to be careful about how we do this, because what is local in our valley, the Vail Valley, Roaring Fork Valley, whatever it is, we're all within about 50 miles of each other, and we all go everywhere to buy things and spend money, like Rick was kind of bringing up. So I just don't want the public to think that we're giving to somebody way far away from us. Gould has people that live in Paonia and Grand Junction, and they're taking their paychecks, 80 miles away, but they also have people that live locally too. So they're spending here. It's just a very complicated and slippery slope. And I want to make sure that we're hiring contractors based on qualifications and price, and then they're going to buy things locally because they basically have to. So I'll stop at that.
Thanks, Matt. I just want to very much clarify that Gould Construction is not a preferred vendor. I misspoke. Please don't take that as anything other than what I meant was local vendor. So I apologize to Mr. Ewing and any other contractor out there that would think that was an intentional thing. So I think we've had the conversation. Catherine, could you call the question?
Cope,
I unmuted everybody.
Can we repeat the motion, please?
Charlie, there's your motion.
I'd move to, I don't have it in front of me anymore, I move to approve the bid to Ewing Contracting for the $600,000, a number that's in the in the packet. I don't remember that number off the top of my head.
Okay, my vote is yes.
Godus,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Step,
I'm trying.
Yes, I don't know what it is tonight. Sorry.
It might be me. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Willman,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, thank you. Now on to our regular agenda. We are right on time. All right, we have a land use consideration. Item number 9, consideration of a special use permit for a retail marijuana establishment at 214 Grand Avenue. Discussion and/or action. Who is presenting? Mr. Hyatt. Is that you?
Hey, good evening, Mayor and members of City Council and those citizens in attendance tonight. Trent Hyatt with the Community Development Department presenting planning file number 06-20, which is a special use permit request for a retail marijuana establishment. The subject property is located at 2114 Grand Avenue in Suite C, which is an approximately 738 square foot existing retail building. Section 70-2030E, Table 30.1 identifies a retail marijuana establishment excluding cultivation as a special use permit in the M1 zone district, which the subject property is zoned. As you can see here in pink is or circled in yellow, the pink represents the M1 mixed use corridor district. So all of the surrounding properties are also zoned M1, and they contain various uses, many gas stations, a hotel to the north, and mixed residential adjacent properties, as well as other retail businesses. Section 70-30-30E11 outlines the specific criteria for a retail marijuana establishment, and B, being that it requires both state licenses prior to operation as well as a city license, that they may not be located within 500 feet of an existing public or private school facility, nor within 900 feet of another retail marijuana establishment. And they shall be in a specific code where they're allowed, or specific zone where they're allowed, including M1. D, that they may only operate from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily, that any sign permit shall be obtained from the city at the appropriate time, that the storage of marijuana shall not exceed 25% of the licensed premises, and there shall be no discernible odor from the use outside the exterior walls of the licensed premises. Other applicable review criteria are outlined in section 70-60-50E3E2, and that's the general special use permit criteria, and that's compatibility with the surrounding area. I mentioned some of those uses that are adjacent to this previously, and that any impacts shall be adequately minimized. One that we always talk about with marijuana uses is the potential for odor nuisances, and one common condition of approval has been included to address that issue. That it be consistent with the general purpose and intent of the code, and that it comply with all applicable standards of the code. Also, that it be in conformance with the comprehensive plan. This property has circled in yellow, and the comp plan map is identified as commercial. And it does seem that this use addresses some of the goals and objectives outlined in the plan, including encouraging economic development, supporting the regional center of Garfield County, which is our city of Glenwood Springs, preserving our small town character, promoting infill development, social diversity, and preserving natural resources. And last, that the use minimizes adverse impacts to the health, safety, and welfare of the inhabitants of the city and surrounding areas. We have not identified any specific negative impacts that are not being mitigated with the application. The referral agencies, we did receive a couple of comments on this application. One from Cdot that they need to address potential traffic impacts and access to the site, and the need for an easement along the southern property boundary in compliance with the city's access control plan. Our police chief did comment with concerns about existing parking and circulation at the site, as well as fire access and security. We received numerous comments from adjacent property owners and others, those listed here, though all those comments were included in your packet. The Planning and Zoning Commission discussed this at their May meeting, a couple meetings prior to that as well, but they were continued. But the issues that they discussed were those outlined by the chief previously, the limited site parking, security, proximity to the hotel to the north and adjacent commercial and residential uses, the access control plan, as well as the number of marijuana-related businesses currently in the city. They voted 7-0 to recommend denial to City Council, and that was based on the substandard parking and access, inconsistency with surrounding uses, as well as with the comp plan. Staff recommends that City Council reverse the decision of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and we have provided findings and recommended conditions for the action item, and that's included in the suggested motions that were added to your packet today. I can also pull those up if need be at any given point during the discussion, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I know John Diet with the Kind Castle was also here and will provide some information to you as well, but if you have any questions of staff, please let me know.
Tony, are you going to comment about the weird sound that was coming for the whole thing?
Well, I have a quick question and the weird sound.
I think it's Trent's. No offense. I think Trent. There's something going on in your background that was like it sounded like a teapot boiling. Go ahead, Tony.
I don't have a teapot. Can I just ask a quick question? Now I lost it. Oh, could staff just answer with their, right above where it says staff recommendation, Planning and Zoning Commission recommendation, it says how the commission voted, and then it says to attract diverse businesses and promote businesses which are not in direct competition with the downtown core. Can you just explain that sentence to me? I understand the next two parts, but not direct competition with the downtown core. Thank you. If Trent could answer that, please.
Yes, just got unmuted there. Hopefully that switched my microphone. That helps a little bit. But that was one of the comments that the Planning and Zoning Commission made in regards to the inconsistency with the comprehensive plan, and that this competed with existing businesses that were in the downtown core. That's a specific item or issue that's addressed in the comp plan.
All right. Thanks, Trent. Thanks, Tony. Other questions for staff, and then we will have John from Kind Castle talk, but Shelley.
Trent, there were several references in the packet. I think a few comments by P&Z Commissioner Dim and also Police Chief, as far as the mixed use nature of the building, and that there are apartments in the back. So is it actually a mixed use building? And are there any, I didn't see anything in the code that restricted a retail marijuana business from being in a mixed use building, but is there anything to that nature? So a two-part question.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Shelley. That was one of the issues that the Planning and Zoning Commission identified, was that most of these uses in other areas of the city are located in, single occupancy existing buildings. To answer the second part question, no, there is nothing in the code that regulates that from occurring.
But are there apartments in that building directly?
Yeah, yes, there are 2 residential units at the rear of that building.
Okay, thanks.
Charlie.
I was trying to raise my hand at the beginning because I'm trying to understand, and this is just because we haven't done this much, and this is probably more controversial than most of the special review use things that come before us. Are we approving the recommendation of planning and zoning or disproving that? What is our role at this level? And then I've got a question after that.
That's a very good question, Charlie. Actually, with this specific use, it's one of the only ones that City Council and both the Planning and Zoning Commission review. Most special use permits only go to the Planning and Zoning Commission with the ability to appeal that decision to City Council, but you are actually the deciding body for this special use permit.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies that. So the second question kind of evolves from that. And I'm not trying to be critical here, but the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial or voted to deny it. And then right underneath that's the staff recommendation. As I read that, is the staff is recommending, even with that denial by the Planning and Zoning, that we approve this. Am I reading that correctly? I'm not trying to criticize Trent. I just trying to understand the report that I read.
Yeah, that is correct, Charlie. Typically with land use applications, we stick with the recommendation that we provided to the Planning and Zoning Commission on through to City Council. We have a little bit more leeway when it comes to legislative acts like text amendments to the code. But with land use applications, we try to stick to the specific review criteria.
I appreciate that, Trent. I was trying to figure out how that happened. So thank you very much.
And you can criticize me all you'd like. That's fine.
Only if I really have a criticism. I don't have. Thank you. I have no more questions.
All right. Thanks, Charlie. I've been trying to, I'm clicking furiously, unmuting Paula.
Did it.
Yes!
Yay.
And 500.
Maybe I just can't, I'm not going to do anything till you say, okay, Paula, you're unmuted.
Okay.
That's what I went with too.
So I have a couple questions, and it was a lot of information, and I want to make sure to understand stuff. So back to Shelley's question about it being a resident. If I remember right, in reading through the packet, there was concern of resident access to the marijuana in the shop, or a potential for that. Was that discussed? How was that resolved as far as having a shared wall and potential access into that building?
I don't know that it is, that it has been addressed directly, Paula. I could just, speak to, well, I'll allow the applicant to speak to the regulations around this use and access.
Okay. All right, and I have more questions. Shall we let him speak to that? John from Kind Castle?
Sorry, I was going to say, just let's,
You want me to keep going and then?
yeah, let's ask all the staff questions now, and then we'll have John give his presentation. Then we'll ask questions of the applicant, and then if there's other stuff at the end that we need to ask of everybody before we take public comment. But
All right, I'll make a note to ask John after his. Okay. Street access. I have pulled into that parking lot before, and I kind of read through what Cdot said, and I hear the southern boundary, and then if I also remember right, there was something about using a shared entrance exit with the gas station. Can you just kind of explain that a little further on people coming in and off onto Grand Avenue? In particular, I kind of look at that on those high traffic times. I understand they won't be open till 9, but if you travel on that street from 4 to 6 in the evening, that's a lot of traffic. So I just want to understand what was CDOT saying, and what are we talking about the southern boundary, and how is that access going to be taken care of?
Well, the applicant does not propose any changes to the current access in regards to CDOT's request for an easement along that southern boundary. We've had discussions with both this property owner as well as the property owner to the south about the access control plans requirement for a future combined access for those two parcels. It is assumed that both of these parcels would be redeveloped at some point in the future. And when that occurs, the city's access control plan with Cdot would require the combination of those two access points. Paul, I would point out that, the existing access and parking and circulation at this site is, slightly of concern, not so much that Cdot had any specific objections, but it is a substandard access. However, in the review of this, staff tried to treat this specific use similar to any other use that would be occupying this site, and we would not necessarily require folks based on just the change of use to upgrade that substandard access to circulation.
And the overflow parking problem where people are parking right now, currently in those businesses, people are parking in other businesses. Is there anything going to be done by the owner, or is there anything within this plan that says, we will make sure that people don't use this other people's property?
One of the things that the applicant has done is that they have actually secured Suite C, which is where the use would be occupied and operated, but they've also secured Suite A to obtain their parking spaces at the site. So that's one thing that they've tried to do to address that issue.
Okay. Can you tell me, because I don't know this history, is there a limit to the number of marijuana related establishments we can have in this town? Has that been addressed?
There is not currently a limit. It has been tossed around as an idea, but staff has not received any direct or any direction from City Council to address that matter. I think that you will hear from our Planning and Zoning Commission that it's something that they would like to discuss, but currently no maximum requirement.
Okay, and Carl had his hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to add on to that, Paula. The last time we redrafted the regulations surrounding that, we based it on distances between businesses, which had an effect of limiting the number of spots that are available when you count the distance from schools, the distance from each other, those kinds of factors. So there's only a few places, there's a limited number of places. And at that time, council was comfortable with that approach rather than a numeric cap.
Okay. Okay, that's good for me now.
All right. Thanks, Paula. Rick, you're unmuted.
Thank you. So Trent, I just have a real quick question. When we look at the traffic problem there, what caused P&Z to use that as one of their pieces of rationale here, was that predicated on the idea that there would be a whole lot more traffic with the marijuana establishment than with the framing establishment? Do you remember that discussion?
I don't know that it was expected that it would be a lot more of an increase in traffic. We did request that the applicant provide us some numbers on that. I think it was a general concern about appropriateness of the use at that site due to that issue.
So is it possible, that they thought there would be a big uptick in traffic compared to the framing shop? I mean, was there any calibration that was done that you know?
Yeah, there were some numbers that were provided, and it showed actually a slight increase in traffic at the peak hour volume as well as daily at this site. I think there was more discussion with P&Z about inconsistency with the surrounding uses and with the comprehensive plan. That was kind of where they landed.
Okay.
It was still a concern that they just landed on a couple other specific issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Shelley, you're unmuted.
Sorry, I just wanted to clarify on the traffic trends, because when I looked at comparing the existing weekday trips and then the existing peak hour trips, it looks like we more than double the peak hour trips. And maybe the number's relatively small. It goes from 11 to 24. And then the weekday trips go from 105 to 202. So, percentage wise, they do almost double, but just kind of as an answer to Rick's. But number wise, it's not a huge number in the respect of the amount of traffic on Grand Avenue, but at that site, it is basically a doubling. Am I reading that right, Trent?
I think you are reading that right. And actually, that was one of the specific requests from staff was to evaluate that because we thought there may be the need for, a revised traffic access permit from Cdot. But, again, I think based on the volumes for Highway 82, it was not of concern to them.
Okay, thanks.
All right, are there any other questions for staff? I do have one question, Trent, and this maybe is going to put you on the spot. So if you don't feel comfortable answering it, I totally understand. But I don't think in 3+ years on council, I've seen staff recommend approval of a project with conditions for sure, certain, and a unanimous disagreement by the Planning and Zoning Commission. And we have a very professional and knowledgeable Planning and Zoning Commission. So I guess my very difficult question is, what's the disconnect? Why? I'm not going to ask you why do you think they're wrong, but how did you evaluate it in a way that you also serve as liaison for the Planning and Zoning in this capacity? What did they look at that you either didn't see, or what were your guys' approval conditions based on?
I think I can answer the latter part of that.
Okay, ignore the first part then.
Well, no, I feel like staff, we just try our best to evaluate these specific to the criteria and how we would deal with our procedures normally. With the Planning and Zoning Commission, I think that they just had more concerns about this specific site than they have had with others.
Okay. Fair enough.
There was also, quite a bit of opposition that may have played into that as well, and many points made by those that spoke publicly and provided letters.
Fair enough. And you didn't have access to those until the public process went through P&Z, so I understand that as well.
Well, and if I may, generally we don't necessarily change our evaluation or opinion of the specific code criteria based on the comments that we receive.
Understand. All right. Thank you very much. That's all I have. Charlie, it looks like you have a question as well. You're unmuted.
Actually, I have a request, Mr. Mayor. May I, without due respect, without lack of respect to the council, I need to stand up. I've been sitting in this chair all day at a court hearing. I just need to stand. I don't want to offend anyone. So
You're not going to offend me if you stand. Do we want, before the presentation, we've been here almost 2 hours, do we want to take a 5-minute break and everybody get a little bit of standing around time? I'm seeing some head nods. Let's take a 7-minute break and reconvene here at 8 o'clock, and we will immediately hear from John from Kind Castle. So
thank you, Mr. Mayor.
See you shortly. Thank you. All right, Alyssa, it's 8 o'clock. We should all be back if you want to reconnect us. All right. Looks like Counselor Davis had an outfit change. Is this what happens in the second act of the concert? All right, it's 8 o'clock. We're back in session. Everybody, if you want to restart your videos, that'd be great. And if Mr. I don't know his last name, but if John from Kind Castle would like to speak and present from the applicant side at this point, that would be great. John, you are unmuted. John, you are unmuted. Can anybody else hear me? Okay. I didn't know if I was talking to myself. John, do you have a way of unmuting yourself? Maybe you would want to call in if you're unable to mute yourself. It's in the bottom left-hand corner, the unmute button. Would somebody mind reaching out to John and providing him, well, one, let him know we're back in if he's just not here, and two, providing him maybe with a call-in number if he's having technical difficulties. Go ahead, Tony.
Could we hear other public comment in the meantime, or is it not appropriate?
No, you really need to have the applicant finish their presentation or for the public to be informed enough to comment, I think. Go ahead, Paula, you're unmuted.
Can we ask John to turn on his video so we know that he's there?
Yeah, John, it'd be great if you could communicate with hand gestures. Trent, if you have his phone number, I can text him a call-in number or something. There we go. You're on it. Yes, Carl. I've unmuted you.
Yeah, thank you. I noticed that Shelley isn't back on yet either, which seems odd. I'm wondering if we're having a glitch. You might text her and see if she's trying to get on but can't.
Yeah. There's Shelley. All right, now we're just waiting for John. Yes, Trent, thanks. You're unmuted.
Thank you. I did get a hold of John. He asked that he be added as a panelist from the phone number ending in 5463. That is his audio.
Unless you might have to do that. All I have is allowed to talk. I cannot promote him, but I can at least allow him to talk. Go ahead, John.
All right, I've just been unmuted. Can everyone hear me all right?
We can hear you perfectly now.
Excellent. I'm sorry, guys. I actually have been on here the entire time, but just my audio is not working on my my computer. So thanks for your patience with that. Hello to you all properly here. Definitely appreciate the time. Definitely been a fan of some of the things you guys have been doing lately with what's been going on. So we're grateful. So the applicant name, of course, is the Kind Castle, located at 2114 Grand Avenue. Suite C is what we're proposing as the licensed premise. Just to give you a little rundown on the basics of sort of the property itself and where it's positioned. It's about 650 feet from the nearest school, which is Columbine School. I have it measured at 649.6, give or take a foot, of course. So we're well in excess of the distance requirement to the nearest school. I think it's at 3,230 feet to the nearest marijuana store, which is Green Dragon. So it is thoroughly spread out in terms of any questionable distance to a school or sensitive subject for the buffers and the setbacks. As you may have seen in the floor plan, it's very strong in terms of compliance and security measures that are put in place. The 20 security cameras that are there, 6 motion detectors. There's 2 separate alarm systems, one of which is just for security. One of which is just for the storage area in itself. So we do take some practices that other people don't do that really, we really ensure that there's no issue as far as security, and that goes into lighting and some of the other plans that you've probably already reviewed in detail. So itself, going into the parking plan does meet the city requirements. I know there has been some concern that's been brought up with the parking itself. But the parking does meet the city's requirements. We've had some fantastic conversations, Trent and others in the city, about ensuring that we can address every one of these issues. But parking was brought up. The formula for the parking spaces for the business was based on the square footage. The habitable floor space, as defined by the code, equates to 587 square feet. And there's 10 parking spaces for that property. So there's plenty of parking for the business, but when you include the fact that we're taking over the barber shop space, which, by the way, that's Suite A, and by the way, they've already long stopped relying on that that retail space. Now they're cutting hair from home, and I was told that is nothing to do with us. It's only from the Corona situation, which would make sense for me from a business standpoint. If they're just cutting some hair here and there, why have the overhead? So they've made that decision, and I think that's probably a wise decision, not having the overhead. But nevertheless, we have taken that space as far as accounting for that parking, and we're not using any of the parking. We're just using it for office, and it's different, from a different business function. So there's no marijuana that's going to be in the former barbershop location, which is Suite A. There's, so I think that does help alleviate some concern with the Cedar Lodge next door, where their primary concern they brought up was the proximity of that barber shop to their location. So I think that does help that concern, the fact that it's Suite C on the opposite end of the building, than being adjacent directly right next door. And overall, with the amount of marijuana stores that are already in town right now, we're not seeing any impact to tourism. I was involved with other businesses in the past, including the Kind Castle at 818 Grand Avenue, which was approved in the past, and then it was revoked. Some of you may have recalled or read some of those things that have taken place in the past with changing the desired area for a marijuana business and altering that so those businesses operate outside of the downtown area. And so in the past, the Kind Castle ended up being told that, we don't want any more marijuana stores in the downtown location. I lost a lot of money because of that. I mean, in the 6 figures, and it really impacted my life because of that. And so here we are back now. We've gone through 2 different ordinance reads, and the new ordinance is, has allowed for the marijuana stores to operate here. If anybody didn't want them in these areas, I would really, hope and wish that we could see those changes so we have definitive guidance as to where the city wants them. Because as a business person, coming in, we kind of do take that as an invitation that, we're able to move forward with at least proposing a location. So So we have followed the ordinance the way it's written. Everything is compliant, everything by the book. The business itself, is currently operating in Parachute, and we've got a number of locations. I've been quite busy actually lately, expanding the Kind Castle. We've just had so much demand, which includes from customers in Glenwood. They're driving to Parachute right now, in current times to purchase product because we are competing substantially with the current stores that are in Glenwood. So from that perspective, I see it making sense, at least from the existing customers that are in town, and we can provide significant value over what's currently in town. I think Todd had mentioned on the last hearing with the planning and zoning last month that he had visited our store, and when he was deciding who would be the appropriate tenant, because he had a few other businesses, and he chose myself and my business based off what he saw at the Parachute site. It's very high end, properly run company. We've had many marijuana enforcement division compliance checks where they send an underage person in. We passed every time. The green joint has failed. Others have failed. Not every time, but others have. But we have a flawless history with that. So you'll find that I'm a little excessive with compliance and these sensitive areas to ensure none of us ever have any worries in these departments. And that includes odor mitigation. I've been very aggressive, incomparable to not only any other store in Glenwood, but to most other stores in the state. I've gone over and beyond with an aggressive plan, which includes 2 independent activated carbon filtration units, which is the product name is Air Purifier T600. And those are 2 independent units. Each one unit is supposed to cleanse 2,000 square feet. And keep in mind, this is substantially smaller than that. And I have 2 units, plus I'm doing an activated air filter installed at the vent of the system's quite powerfully, at the system's airflow, which powerfully draws in, the air from the premises and forces it through the activated carbon filter. So it's a triple strength. I mean, we're looking at the power that I'm deploying for odor mitigation would fall in about a 5,000 to 6,000 square foot facility. So I've really gone excessive, really, just to ensure that there's no issues. So I am known for ensuring that there's no problems and we have no issue. And this is 2.5 years in operation in Parachute now. Never had a problem. We were voted #1 in Colorado, Weed Maps, Leafly. We just got some other awards. I mean, they're piling up. I can't even keep track of the high rating. So I'm grateful for it. I'm proud of it, and we'd love to see it in Glenwood. I will tell you that at the planning and zoning, I have to mention this. At the planning and zoning meeting last month, somebody had mentioned, one of the staff members had mentioned that they would like to see these businesses in the downtown core instead of the outskirts. And anybody else on earth that you said that to would, it would be maybe fine, or it would make sense. But keep in mind, I'm the one person that had proposed a store in the downtown core already, got approved, and then had the license revoked because of the uproar that was going on at the time, which I'm sensitive to. So I said, okay, I will lose my $200,000 on, everything that I've done so far. It was very high rent. There was a lot going on. So I go out, I spend countless hours doing all of this, and we've gone into enormous detail. So everything is by the book. We have reached an agreement, and I'd like to address some of the perfect questions that were asked earlier, because they're exactly what I would want to know, such as the Stinkers location next door and overall access. We've reached an agreement with Stinkers. We've got along great, by the way. And they have agreed to grant us an easement between our site and the Stinkers gas station property next door. So once we do a redevelopment, we'll share the access. And they have agreed, and we have the agreement for the easement. So that subject has been addressed. Apex Consulting Engineers conducted the traffic assessment. The study shows minimal impact, as Trent had mentioned. It's very minimal impact, especially when you consider the fact that we're now accounting for, we're replacing from not only the framing store, but also the barber store. So I think when you take both of those sides in consideration, it really is a minimal impact to traffic. And you pile on the fact that there's significant traffic there already. traffic passing by, that it really a drop in the ocean in my opinion. Also keep in mind that the Kind Castle traffic, I would ask that you keep in mind that that traffic is going to be, spread out throughout the evening too. So we're going to see a little, we're going to spread that traffic out throughout the day instead of concentrating that into the daytime hours, such as, the framing store or former barber store that's there. So I think that overall, we're really not going to see any issue in terms of, traffic, anything in that department. I just also just want to, point out the fact that everything has been completed to the best of my ability. As an applicant and as a business owner, all we can do is just follow the code. That's all we can do. And we can, we work under good faith that the code, the way it's written, we'll be able to, meet that code and be qualified as an applicant, being respectful for the fact that this is obviously a special use permit. We've gone through a lot in the past. We've been through hell, to be honest with you. No one's seen anything like it in the city of what we experienced with the opposition and everything in the past. So we're hoping now that we've done this all over again and I know I'm the only one that's been through it all. 6 years now I've been doing this. I've been, proposing stores. So it's really been a long run, and I would just really ask that, I'm hoping and asking that you can grant this license, and any questions that you have, I'm more than happy to answer them. But I think that's really it. That all I want to say. Staff had recommended approval from P&Z. We appreciate that. And any other questions, if I didn't address it, I'm all ears. I'd love to have that discussion.
Question for the applicant. Charlie, you're unmuted. Let me try again.
I am. Thank you. John, what hours of operation are you going to have?
The hours are 9 until 7 p.m. is what we're proposing.
That's 10 hours a day.
Right.
Correct? And your traffic counts say that
right, that's correct. Yep.
Your traffic counts say you're going to have 202 trips a day. So that's roughly 20 in and out, or 20 either in or out in every day per hour.
Right. Right. Yeah, approximately. Mm-hmm.
I've been in that parking lot, and I'm concerned if I get 10 cars, because I'm going to say that one car is going in and out, so that's 20 trips per hour. I'm concerned that 10 cars are going in and out per hour. That's going to become a problem. Why should I be concerned about that?
Why shouldn't you be concerned about that? Well, I think that it really helps the fact that we have taken the additional parking. I know that the redevelopment in the future, I think, will substantially help with that. But in the current time right now, the figures that have been put together from the traffic study, I'm not sure that we're actually going to reach those numbers, in all honesty. I'd like that from a financial standpoint, but I think it's a little bit more than what we're going to see, especially during the day. I mean, if you look at the other stores in town, I'm not really seeing, daytime traffic like that, at least prior to those prime hours as we get late into the afternoon. So I do think that some of that would be skewed, and I think that most people are coming later in the hours. At least they are for the parachute store that I have. So I think that will help actually. But taking over the additional space, and we've been told many times from the pawn shop that he's been looking for bigger space for quite a while, and I've talked to Dave many times, we text and talked and everything. So I've even found him a couple sites for his location. So he's got some great ideas, by the way, and I know he wants to expand on that business, and he can't do it in the current space. So soon we're going to see that. I'm sure of it. I know it's not in writing right now, but we've had a lot of discussion. I've been in there. I've sat with Dave many times. I've spent a lot of time with him. So once that happens, that's going to be a whole other layer of, opening up, some parking there. But I think that's the best I could do to try to address that concern, but it's certainly a great question. Okay.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Thanks. Paul, you're unmuted.
I have a couple of questions. John, are you having your employees, are you mandating they park off-site?
Are they working off-site for the business?
Or are you going to ask them to park off-site to take care of your
Oh,
business?
absolutely.
And where would they do?
Yeah, we've discussed we've discussed parking downtown. We've also discussed some people that we know just locally that could help somebody out here that might be staying at their place and have them park their car over here. So there's been a few little scenarios with some people that we know personally, but the I would say the more of a formal plan would be that they can park downtown and walk to the store itself. That would dramatically help with just the overall parking situation.
And keeping on the parking topic, there has been a problem with overflow parking. So the motel next to you has a couple of concerns. I'd like to address that. One is overflow parking. And how are you going to keep your customers from using their parking area? And then number two, how can you, other than your air filter system, what can you do to help mitigate their concerns about odors into rooms that are nearby the shop, that type of stuff?
Right. Well, I will tell you right off the bat for odor that, in 2.5 years in business, we've never had a single complaint for odor. Obviously, that's a different place, a different building, a different setup. So it doesn't give you finite proof there, but it gives you something to go by in terms of our general, business practices. So as far as that goes with odor, we do want to reinforce the internal ceiling of the building itself, where we can layer and reinforce that. The ceiling would be my primary concern of any permeation between other sites, and so we have had loose discussions with contractors and people about measures that we can take to reinforce that. I'm quite confident in our air filtration system, but I'm 100% on board in ensuring not just myself, but none of us have any headaches from this. I don't want calls going to you guys later about odor or anything. And everybody in town, I think, has really been good about it. Speaking of my competition and looking at that aspect of it, and they're not going anywhere near us with the measures we're taking for odor. But in addition to the activated carbon filtration units, which is beyond triple the capacity in terms of square footage filtration of the air, we are going to reinforce upwards on the ceiling to just for another layer. A couple people, including an attorney, said I don't need to do this. Well, I like to go a little bit beyond to ensure that none of us have any problems, including the tenants, and we're all in peace with the odor subject. So I really don't see any issue with the odor, with that that level of an aggressive plan to mitigate that.
And keeping
and I'm sorry, there was another question you asked prior to that.
The parking overflow, people using the motel's parking to access the businesses in that little shopping center right now. How would you keep your customers from using that?
Proper signage up that customers have to park in our designated parking area. I think that overall, and I've got a little bit more to say on that. Such a good question, especially when we look at the building overall, just even forgetting about whether it's marijuana use or anything. One thing that I really do see the landlord's perspective on, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else, there should be one tenant on a commercial basis at that site. And I think that is the foundation of almost everybody's problems there. And so I say it, whether it's marijuana, whether it's anything else. And if this does get denied, I know that the landlord is going to be seeking one tenant from a commercial standpoint there, because there's 3 different business ratings. The pawn store gets a lot of traffic. We know there's traffic coming in from the barber shop constantly, trickling in throughout the day, and then the framing store. So whatever happens, forget about me for a minute. That building needs a consolidation of tenancy. And that premise right there, again, marijuana or not, is, I think, a foundation of resolving people's concerns. And I know that the landlord has this premise in mind, and that I agree with, whether it's me or whether it's somebody else. And there's a lot of bickering and fighting that's been taking place over the years with those tenants. And I know that the landlord's tired of it. It's a stress certainly on the tenants. And they're sort of, it's like there's only room for so much, and they're all battling for that little space, whether it's parking or whether it's signage, or, they're kind of crammed together and they're sharing this parking and fighting for this parking. So I totally agree that whether it's me or somebody else, one commercial use for that site is the solution, where it gets rid of those issues. And that's why, I know, well, not the reason why the pawn shop's been leaving, but it's why I've been discussing that subject with the pawn shop, where, that parking allocation would, we would be able to absorb that. So it's such a good question. And when you look at that site, I see what you see. I'm a very reasonable person, so I can see things on both sides. I'm not stuck in my own head of, everything's great. And so I've been listening the whole time, from not just this call, but everything from staff. And that concern, I think, needs to be addressed regardless of who the tenant is. One commercial use there will solve so many problems at that site. And so I hope that does speak to your question, but please, by all means, I'm all ears if there's any additional questions in that department.
I had one more question that I had asked Trent, and he said to wait till we could talk to you, and that was, what are you doing to prevent the residents who are attached to the back of the building? What is set up to prevent access from them going through, and anyhow, security-wise? The access to the
I'm sorry, Paula. I believe I heard everything you said. It cut out just a little bit there. I think that you were saying that what am I doing in terms of the access? So a resident, like the residents directly adjacent in the rear of this space, what they can do to access our building for security? Did I hear you right?
What I'm concerned about is you have two residents that are attached to that building who, there's an opportunity for them to have, to find a way into your shop. And I'm just wondering what do you do security wise to keep that?
Right. Well, there is no access through. There is no, they can't get through. So there isn't a doorway that's been closed off or anything of that sort. From security cameras, motion detectors, it's above and beyond I've looked at everyone else's, floor plans and security plans. It doesn't come close, to the measures that we're taking from that. So just from a general security standpoint, I think our security system will mitigate that. However, in the long term, though, and actually somewhat in the future here, we've discussed, we found some additional housing for our employees, including management. And we've discussed the tenant behind the building relocating to one of the other residences that have nothing to do with this site. And we sort of trading with the residents, with the current tenant that's in the residence behind there. And so that sort of, it mitigates any concern about, access, exactly what you just said. It also provides housing, whether my employee is going to stay there or stay somewhere else, or if the person staying behind is staying somewhere else and my employee is staying there. It's no net loss to a resident. The last thing we'd want to do is displace somebody. So I think that allowing us to take that resident behind there, which is what we've discussed with the landlord, is another measure that will just ensure we never have that concern. We never have, and that opens up parking in the rear, which was another benefit of doing that. That allows my staff access to additional parking in the back of the property site itself.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Is there any other questions for the applicant? Any other questions for staff? I just have one more question for Trent before we open it to public comment. Trent, could you explain how the Green Dragon, which is located beside the auto parts store there, and the Mexican restaurant. It seems like the P&Z, one of the big sentiments is that it detracts from the downtown core and it's not a compatible use. Can you speak to why this use in this area is so significantly different than when, and I guess, was it approved? Did a previous council approve the Green Dragon location as a special use permit? And how was that approved, and why is this not approved by P&Z at this point?
Jonathan, the Green Dragon that's located south of this site near AutoZone, I think is the one you're referring to. I'm not sure how that was approved, but that was prior to my time, and that was prior to our current regulations. It actually used to be that this use was a use by right in various commercial zones before the current regulations. So can't speak to exactly how that one was approved at the time.
But are there significant, if you're familiar with the area, are there significant differences in this site than the Green Dragon that you're aware of?
In terms of proximity to the downtown, no.
Yeah, I mean, proximity, the things that P&Z said, here's why we're not approving it. Things like proximity to downtown, things like access on 82, things like parking. What are some of those?
I think you could argue that location has better access and parking.
Okay. Thank you. That's my only question. Appreciate it, Trent. Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or staff? Seeing none, we'll now turn this over to comments from the public. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. See some hands. Oh, I'm seeing a lot of hands going up now. And please keep to the topic specifically of this application and P&Z's denial criteria. So, Monica Wolney, you're unmuted.
Thanks, Council. I want Council to justify why we need another pot shop. What purpose would another pot shop in Glenwood serve? As a citizen in Glenwood who is raising kids in this town surrounded with pot shops, but lacks bowling alleys, theaters, or anything kids desire. I also live 4 businesses away from a pot shop on Highway 6, and filtration systems or not, you guys put that pot shop in and I still smell it. So I really feel bad for whoever's gonna be living if you pass that above, or whoever owns a property next to it, because I suffer with it every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Tim O'Keefe, you're unmuted.
Hi, I'm Tim O'Keefe, live at 320 Park Drive here in Glenwood. I guess really 3 issues to bring up with this application. I think the first, which the council has spoken a lot on, is the parking and access issue. I know the applicant says there's 14 spaces. 2 or 3 of those will be used for the resident. And honestly, of the 10 spaces that are out front, which really will be used by customers, because customers won't find those parking spaces in the back. They're just not intuitive. If you look at those parking spaces, 2 of them, you basically have to back onto Grand Avenue. And the applicant said that his employees will park downtown and walk. I just feel like that's not a viable option in the middle of the winter. I can't imagine an employee parking a mile away and walking to this site. Let's see. The other thing about the parking and access is that he said business is booming and increasing in his other sites, and yet is at the same time arguing that he doesn't need more parking spaces. So that's a counterintuitive argument. It's sort of a oxymoron, because he's saying that business is booming, and yet he's not accounting for the parking on that space. So I think the parking and access to that site, especially with the signage, is atrocious. Secondarily, it's very close to residential apartments, and there's tons of kids and families that live in those apartments behind the site. And that's not even been discussed in this. I know it's not in close proximity to a school, but it's very close to a lot of families with kids. And I just feel like it's an inappropriate site for that reason. And then finally, just to reiterate what many of the public comments have made regarding another pot shop, does the city council really feel like an 8th or 9th or 10th or 12th or 20th pot shop in Glenwood is appropriate? I think we could argue that we've got plenty, that this is a poor site and it's not a good use of this business, regardless of if they have 1 unit or 3 units. And so I would encourage the council to follow the P&Z's unanimous recommendation to deny this application and encourage you to deny it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate those comments. Next up is Haley Kramer. Hi, Haley.
Hi, thank you. My name is Haley Kramer. I'm with Garfield and Hecht, 901 Grand Avenue, Suite 201. I'm speaking on behalf today for the owners of the Cedar Lodge Motel, which is immediately to the north of the subject location. I have a couple of letters in the packet that you all have, one that was presented to P&Z and then one directed to council specifically that touches on some of the things that the applicant mentioned during the hearings, and then also P&Z's findings. And won't go through that in detail, but would direct you to that if you have any specific questions. But as you've heard from a couple of the commissioners or counselors already, and then some of the other public comment, the biggest issues with this particular application are certainly odor, parking, and traffic circulation. Even with the existing businesses that are there today that generate half of the traffic that the proposed dispensary would, they're still having overflow problems. So if you double the amount of traffic in and out of this space, there's bound to be worse overflow parking onto my client's property, which they shouldn't have to deal with. And we didn't hear any solid comments from the applicant about how they would enforce the parking on their spots. I don't know that signage is enough, and obviously people know where they're going and where there should be parking, but they still end up parking on the Cedar Lodge lot. The applicant also mentioned that Cedar Lodge's primary concern is the proximity of Unit A. That's not the case. It's the whole Unit C is only about 90 to 100 feet from the front door of the front office of the lodge. And so when they have visitors coming in and out of there all the time, the owners themselves would be burdened by the odors that would be coming out of the shop. So that proximity is problematic, notwithstanding the fact that there's another dispensary that's close to other hotels. This one's a lot closer to Cedar Lodge than other ones in Glenwood. And the circulation of the lot itself is problematic, as well as the fire chief had mentioned. And if there is eventually an easement on the south side, one of the commissioners at P&Z mentioned that could take away some of the existing parking spaces as well. So there's not enough space for employees and customers of the proposed application or the proposed applicant, as well as the existing businesses that are there. And we don't think that it's appropriate to put a marijuana dispensary in the same building that shares a wall with 2 residential units. That's unique in Glenwood. So that would also set it apart from, say, Green Dragon, which is further down south. So we urge council to adopt P&Z's unanimous recommendation and deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Haley. Is there any other public comment? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing now and bring it back to council for a motion and or further discussion.
Could I address their concerns?
Yes.
I'm sorry, am I able to address their, usually I can respond back after public comment?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay, all right, thank you. I'll be very, yeah, I sure can. Sorry, there's a bit of a delay on the line. I'll be very quick here. I'm sure you've gone through enough of the the fact gathering at this point, but I did hear what is the purpose of another pot store, and so a lot of the connection I got on that last, I couldn't hear almost everything that was said on that last comment, so I'll do my best. But what is the purpose of another pot store? People ask. Keep in mind, I've been hearing these same questions going back a number of years now. I used to hear, a lot of the things about what is it going to do for tourism? How is it going to impact the city's image? I've been through it all. And I used to, even admittedly so, years ago, I mean, none of us could say, me included, is it going to impact the tourism? We didn't know. Of course, I wanted the approval back then and do right now. But back then, we didn't think, we thought, well, what if it does? What if they're right? And maybe it will impact the tourism. But we've seen now, and these are the same concerns that are voiced, throughout all of Colorado, regardless of the municipality. And they're valid concerns because honestly, back then, we didn't know. We really didn't. This was sort of an experiment of a new industry. But we've seen over the years now that every concern that they've had, valid as they were, have not manifested to any real tangible concern. Even though I'm totally respectful of that, and I even myself, I shared maybe this is a concern. We don't know. It's too early on. But after all these years, we know now that those concerns don't actually happen. And as far as close proximity to residences, I would say that every store in town could be considered, or just about. There you got the Devereaux stores. Maybe there's not so much proximity to residents there. But overall, almost all the stores, the way that, our city is set up here, they're all close to residences. They're all a stone throw away. So, I mean, I would jump on it, and I can see, things where people in opposition might say something. I'm like, all right, well, they have a valid point there. But, with the close proximity to residences, and now if we're talking about the residents adjacent to this that's on site, I had just heard, which is the only part of that I could hear on that last comment, for Cedar Lodge, which I actually happen to really like the owners of Cedar Lodge. I know we did discuss renting me a space at the CompuPhone store in the past, and they said they didn't want a marijuana store, and they're right about that. But they wanted me as a tenant there. They just didn't want the marijuana use there. If I was going to do another business, and they were fine. So we got along great as people. I like them a lot, and maybe they like me as a person, but don't like my use. As that was made clear last month. So, but I will say that it doesn't share the wall with two residences, just to make it clear, but it does one residence directly behind it. And if we take that residence, that resolves everything. It doesn't have any issue. So we've even discussed covering the cost of the tenant to move and, do all these things to make sure that nobody has any issue whatsoever. And so from on our end and the deals and the conversations I've had, there are no issues. I get along great with the pawn shop. I get along great with the tenants and the landlords and the neighbors. So I just wanted to point those things out. And I just want to say every one of these marijuana hearings is valid, and we appreciate all the comment, but there's always a few in opposition that say, how many pot stores is enough? But this hearing isn't about that. I'm following the current code the way it is, and not, and that's great. If they want to limit that, I know that the city has a process, so, people can come in and say, hey, we should put a moratorium in place. But I would just say, if you don't have a moratorium in place, or put a moratorium in place so you don't entice us to spend all this money and jump through all these hoops only to find out later that, it's not appropriate. So as a business owner, we need some business certainty. I mean, and I appreciate hearing some comments earlier that, the special use permit has a certainty to it. But I would just ask that, we follow the code. We've done everything perfect. I've been proposing stores in the downtown core, around the clock working to do that before. I was told the outskirts. Here I am going to the outskirts and told that that's not appropriate. You got to go back downtown now. That part, I mean, I hear everyone out, but I'm just asking for fairness. That's all I'm asking for. And we followed the code to the T. Nothing we haven't. We have addressed every single concern thoroughly, not just mildly, but thoroughly, that the staff has brought up to me. Because I want no headaches for anybody. None of you. I want none of us to have any issues. So, and the odor, the apartment right upstairs in Parachute, I was living in that apartment, and even passing right there, you don't smell a flick of odor coming out of that store. So I spent a lot of time walking right brush against the wall of that store, and I don't smell. I can't speak to the competition in town. I've seen so many things they do that it's very minimal, just to put it politely. I'm not one of this is very professional. We do everything proper, no cutting corners or any of that stuff. So odor is not going to be an issue. I will be sure of it. I'll be out there sniffing every day to make sure of it. This is my license and my everything on the line for this. So I appreciate it. I'm sorry to ramble on again. I just wanted to address those concerns, and I appreciate the chance to respond to that.
Absolutely. Thank you, John. I'm still looking for a hand to go for a motion. Tony, you're unmuted.
I would make a motion to affirm the ruling by the Planning and Zoning Commission in this case. This was a special use project, and I think they are under different, as Charlie rightly pointed out, and as City Attorney addressed, there are different standards. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 7-0 in opposition to this project, and I support that decision by those professionals. So I'm going to make a motion to support that. Thank you.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. It's been moved by Tony, seconded by Shelley. Now we need to see some hands so I can hear what people think about this motion. Charlie, thank you. You're unmuted.
Carl, probably a question for you. Don't we have to make specific findings, or is the motion sufficient if we're going to support this motion?
Thank you, Jonathan. I guess I interpreted Tony's motion to incorporate the findings of the Planning Commission, but he may want to confirm that.
Is that what you meant, Tony?
Yes, and I'm not muted, so I will. Oh, I'm not muted. Yay. Yes, I am.
Okay.
I make
Right.
that, and I amend that motion if Shelley agrees to include that.
So I have a comment. I'm concerned about the traffic the going in and out. Particularly as I listened to John talk, and I really appreciate his presentation, but he talks about these 200 and some car trips that he brings to us and says, well, they may not be accurate. And one of the commenters pointed out the fact that he said, I have a bustling business and everybody wants to come to me. And that's great. I hope he does have that. But if we have all these the in and out traffic coming in, it comes in later in the day, it's even going to be more impactful because it'll be from that 6 to, they close at 7 o'clock. It'll be the 5 to 7 route when we're going to have a lot of traffic already coming down Grand Avenue. So I have a lot of concern about that. And that's one of the reasons I'm going to vote for this motion.
All right. Thank you, Charlie. Rick, you are unmuted.
Thank you. It seems to me that as a council, we have to come to grips with how many shops do we think are important in Glenwood Springs. I think it's a little bit unfair to an applicant to sort of make this a moving target. I'm sympathetic to the people who say that we have too many, but I think we have a fundamental obligation as a legislative body to make that determination and then to live by it. I'm concerned with the issue of traffic that we've heard. It seems like that's not necessarily even a secondary concern by which the Planning and Zoning Commission made their declaration. If I'm remembering what we've talked about here this evening, it seemed like that was sort of a third a reason to deny. And I'm not saying it's not an important issue, but I am saying that it seems that the calibration for the existing businesses versus the marijuana shop, I didn't hear anywhere in this suggestion that there was going to be a huge spike in traffic. Now, I could be wrong about that. And so my other rationale to not support this motion is that I really believe that with free enterprise that if we have a rule that specifically says no, we ought to be enforcing that. And this is a business such as other businesses, and I understand the odor issue, and I understand the commitment by the owner to try to mitigate that, if not, completely eliminate it. But I also think that, we need to have that discussion, perhaps citywide, about what we're going to be willing to tolerate in the future. Because if we deny this application, the next one that would come along all of a sudden, seems to be more palatable. And we take the top two reasons and say, well, we applied this to the kind business, but we're not going to apply it here. I think gets us into sort of a sticky wicket. And Carl, I'd welcome any comments that you want to make about special use. But at this point, yeah, I'm going to shake my head yes, because, if you do feel like you'd like to comment on that, that would be great. Thank you.
I don't really have anything to add. I think Trent did a good job of describing the criteria for the special use permit and your approval or denial. So I don't really have anything to add there.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that all, Rick? All right. Shelley and then Paula. You're unmuted.
Thank you. I appreciate the previous comments and Rick's, but I also feel like with the special use permit, it requires a higher criteria for approval. And with the neighbor properties concerns about the project, and I feel like those concerns are legitimate about parking and circulation, parking for employees. I'm going to vote to uphold the motion and uphold the planning and zoning recommendation on this project. Thanks.
Thanks, Shelley. Paula, you're unmuted. I'm getting better. We're getting better at this, Paula.
All right, thank you. I'm learning to wait. I'm trying to be patient. Boy, this is a tough one. As you can tell, because I seem to have had the most questions. I agree with Rick. The discussion of how many pot shops we have and that type of stuff is a different discussion, and we as a council should possibly bring that back. And it's a new council. Carl said something was done about it a few years back. Maybe it's time to reach and regroup on that. But I am concerned about access and parking. And I feel like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse. The landlord needs to figure out our access and parking. If this is the type of business he wants with the quantity of people that will be coming and going, then something needs to be done to take care of that situation and to approve this with the expectation that in the future, John and the landlord are going to work on different things, and John might get a residence in the back that, gives him more parking, and, he's going to ask his employees to park downtown. I feel like we haven't resolved a problem that is affecting another business already. So I'm trying to take this from the viewpoint of this is a business that wants to move in and set up a shop, and, is everything in place for him to open that business with this permit? And I don't feel like it's there yet. And I don't want to do it on the contingency that there is a lot of expectation of things that are going to be done to mitigate problems. So at this point, I just feel like with the police chief's concern and the fire chief's concern and my own experience having parked in that facility, that's not quite ready for the amount of traffic that we're looking at coming up. So I'm going to probably have to agree with this motion.
Thank you. Steve Davis, you're up. You're unmuted.
Well, I just want to say that we can't have a discussion here about how many pot shops or what's enough or what's not enough. The reality is that we represent the citizens of Glenwood Springs. I've had a lot of comment, both written and oral, regarding this, and everybody that I have had communication with feels like it's not compatible with the surrounding area, and that it's not consistent with the general purpose and intent of the development code. So I'm going to have to support the P&Z's findings.
Thank you. Charlie, do you need another comment? You're unmuted. Quick clarifying question is what I heard.
Yeah, quick. Actually, I just want to be real clear. I'm not doing this because it's a marijuana shop. That is not being part of my decision. My concern is the traffic flow in and out. If this was a liquor store, I'm just trying to think of something else might be compatible to the use and had this many cars coming in and out, I would have equal concerns about that. So it has nothing to do that it's another marijuana shop, and I want to ensure my vote's clear that's not the reason.
Thank you, Charlie. I guess I'll give a couple comments real quick from my end. I still do not see significant differences between this and the Green Dragon as far as the location. Yes, it does have 10 to 14 parking spots. I think as a customer to your favorite dispensary, I guess, you tend to know where you can and can't park and what is on and off ability. So I don't really see the parking as that significant of an issue. I don't see the resident in the back. If this is going to get built out in the next 30 to 60 days and they weren't going to provide any moving expenses or help for the current tenant if they wanted to move, I could see that as an issue, and maybe we could make that as a condition of the approval if that was the case. But then in the future, every other future tenant is going to know what they're getting into. So I don't see sharing a wall with the residents. There's probably hundreds of retail marijuana shops across this state and thousands across the country that share similar issues, and you know what you're getting into. Current tenant possibly excluded. I was accused at one time by a fellow city councilor of not being a free market guy, and that really struck a nerve. And I have not forgiven that city councilor who said that several years ago. But this is free market, and we don't have a cap. If we want a cap, Steamboat has a cap. They have 3 marijuana licenses available in the entire town of 15,000 people. So if we want to do that, that's fine. And I was struck by all the outpouring of comments from citizens. I appreciate Councilor Davis, you saying, everyone I've heard says we don't want this here, but you could have that for any applicant, for any reason. We're going to hear that on future applications, and we've heard it numerous times on other ones. How many pot shops is enough? Well, we don't have a limit. We don't pick winners and losers when it comes to liquor stores, when it comes to barbershops, when it comes to auto supply places. So these people that are saying we have too many are making moral judgments on the type of business and saying that this is not compatible with the town. And right now we have 7 active marijuana shops. So I guess my question would be, if we're going to make a decision partly on the concerns of the citizens, then we need to probably have a conversation on, is 7 enough? Is it too many? What is that magic number where we're going to tell the free market enough is enough? As to the odor complaints, hypothetical odor complaints, we have a staff report that says, if they're with one of the conditions of approval would be if there is odor issues that they could revoke their permits. So I think they would be incredibly motivated to not have any odor issues. And if they do, it's as simple as revoking their business license, and all the money that they have put into it will be gone. And then, Tony, Councilor Hershey said something about trusting the professionals on P&Z. And we do have a great P&Z board. We absolutely do. I agree with him. And I think I led off with saying that. But they're not professionals. They are lay people primarily who are entirely committed and know a lot about development. But the actual professionals are the staff. We have planning and zoning, community development professionals who have recommended this. And that's what I just don't think I can get around is the professionals who said this does comply with our code and with the comp plan with these conditions. It's very difficult. So I agree with Paula. This is tough. It's really, really tough. But at the end of the day, I just don't see enough rational findings in the planning and zoning findings to be able to sustain their unanimous approval. And that is unfortunate, because they are a great commission, and 99 out of 100 times I would take their recommendation and just as gospel, but I can't on that. That's why I will not be supporting this motion. So as Councilor Hershey has said in the past, I can count as well. So let's take that count. Catherine, let's do roll call.
Coe,
Sorry, I'm going to unmute everybody. Sorry. Go ahead.
Coe,
Yes.
Voorhees,
No?
Willman,
Yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Godes,
No.
Davis,
Steve, there we go.
Yes.
Hershey.
Yes, please, yes.
Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, John, for all the work you put into this. And thank you, staff, Trent, specifically on this, and our P&Z too. All right, next item on the agenda is a 6:55. Man, we're only 2 hours and 6 minutes running behind schedule tonight. Award of cable bid 2020-025 for 24 reels of 500 MCM cable to Western United Electrical for $110,378.40. Mr. Langhorse, tell us about this.
Good evening, council. The only reason I didn't really put this on consent agenda was it's kind of a milestone for the electric department. We've been working on this project for basically 4 going on 5 years. We are taking down the giant ugly green poles that are in front of the hotel, the Hot Springs pool, the Amtrak, brew pub, and by our North Glenwood substation. This is kind of a culmination of 4 years of putting in conduit. Appropriately, when we were doing 7th Street, when the pedestrian bridge went in, we finished it off with some line work this year in 6th Street, repaved. 6th Street is looking beautiful at this point. But I kind of wanted to give kudos to the electric department. They've done a lot of this. In Gould Construction and a few other people have really helped out with this project to get it done. But we are moving towards getting rid of those really ugly green overhead poles that kind of plague the middle of downtown Glenwood. This proposal is within budget. The timeframes associated with the delivery of the reels are perfect for us to still complete the work this year. Most likely we'll get the wire pulled. We may not actually do the switchover until next year, because you can imagine taking down lines that cross I-70, the railroad, and the river is going to be a little complicated. And we'll probably do that in the spring of next year when we have time to coordinate closures of all of those things, which probably won't happen this year. So short and sweet, we're really proud of this. This is something that the electric department's been working on a while, and this is kind of the culmination of that effort. That's it.
Awesome. Well, I'll just speak on behalf of all the council and say great job and thank you very much. I think this is going to be a great addition to our town. Other than the aesthetics, it also provides additional security from tree limbs and squirrels and everything else. So I think from a redundancy and service delivery standpoint, I think this is a huge win. So does anybody else want to make a comment? Sounds like I just nailed it. All right. Well, thank you very much. This was just an update. This was, oh wait, was this an update? Or no, we actually have to award it. Okay. Just because I want to make sure we always have the ability to, is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on the award of this $110,000 contract? All right. See none, I'll bring it back for a motion from Shelley. who's unmuted.
Okay, I would like to move that we award the cable bid 2020-025 for 24 reels of 500 MCM cable to Western United Electric for $110,378.40. And thank you, Matt, for this work. Sounds like a great project.
Charlie?
Mr. Davis is seconding. I see us two up. I'll let him do that.
Okay. I have a motion by Shelley, a second by Councilor Davis. Further conversation? All right. Catherine, let's take roll.
Hershey,
Yes.
Step,
Yes.
Davis,
Let the record show that he is signifying a thumbs up. Andy,
Yeah.
yes? There we go. There we go.
Godus,
Yes.
Cope,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
Willman.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Thank you again, Matt. Please pass all of our sincere thanks on to Doug and the electric department.
Will do.
All right. How's everybody doing? I know we just took a break an hour ago. Are we still good to keep plowing on for a bit? Okay. Just want to check in. Item number 11, resolution 2020-22, resolution City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, adopting a fat, oils, and grease fog policy. Mr. Langhorse, it's the Langhorse show tonight.
Hey, I'm right back again. The City of Glenwood Springs already has basically a fog policy or municipal code section that's 80-30-30 waste discharge regulations. So those control kind of how we deal with fats, oils, and grease releases. We can find people, we can turn their waters off, we can do all kinds of fun things. But I think that the policy or the code is missing a little bit of something, which is a policy. What do those owners need to do? What are they responsible for? When we have conversations with owners, they don't really get it a lot of the times. They don't understand what a fat, oils, and grease is and why it can't be discharged to the sewer system. And I can tell them very quickly why it can't be discharged to the sewer system, because it clogs up our sewer systems quite quickly. We have occurrences of this, and I'm not even gonna throw a number out. It's a scary number all over town. And we'd like to have a policy to be able to hand to people and say, this is what we're expecting of you to meet this municipal code 80-30-30. Give them a fair chance to say, okay, we understand that's a problem. You guys are jetting the lines once a week, because it's really easy to see who's discharging fats, oils, and greases, because it comes out of their service and it clogs up right next to the service, not upstream, just downstream of their service. So it's really easy to kind of find them and prove who's creating these issues. And we've had a lot of good compliancy. You know, there was a fast food chain last year that didn't have a oil sand separator in place. We asked them to put one in. They did it. It wasn't a huge deal. Was it a bit of a cost? Yes, but it accomplished what we needed, and we don't have to jet that line every week anymore. We just put it on the monthly schedule that we normally do. So basically, if you read through the policy, we're just outlining what the purpose of the 80-30-30 code is, outlining owners' responsibilities associated with it, owners' maintenance record keeping and submittal requirements associated with what we're asking them to do. And then we'll put in an inspection program and policy enforcement. The policy enforcement goes right back to the 80-30-30 in the code that's already existing. So we're just asking that we be able to install this policy just like we did the engineering standards. It's not part of the code. It's a resolution. It's an attachment to the code, trying to help define what the city is trying to get these businesses to accomplish, basically. Sorry, it's really hard to explain this over Zoom. I don't know why.
All right.
We can go through it very specifically if you would like, or you can ask questions.
Any questions for Matt? Tony's got a hand up. Okay. I just saw you reach out in general. I didn't know if you were reaching up. I just couldn't see it off the camera. Shelley, there we go. Let me unmute you. You're unmuted.
Just a quick question, Matt. It sounds like, from what I could see in the, as far as penalties, it's not meant to be penalty. It's more talk to the owners, they get a warning or they get education on the issue. And then can you just walk through that quick for us, what we're adding as far as that goes?
So penalties, we're not adding anything to it. You know, the first violation is a written warning. The second violation is a potential result in termination of services. And, you know, basically this is a tool for the building department, helps us with these kind of conversations because it's a building code that installs these grease, oil, sand separators within the building. And if they're lacking those things, it's the building department that actually does the permitting for them to be installed. So, you know, we're not out to shut people down. We're out to educate all of the businesses and do it in a way just by, you know, we can send them all a letter saying, hey, this is the code, this is the policy associated with it. These are what the requirements in the policy we'd like you to follow. We've even given them a very simple one-page form to just fill out to keep track of their records, you know, and
great.
Most of the time we won't even be chasing after them because we'll still be out there jetting. And when we sometimes we inspect the lines if we see things coming out of them. And it's really just a way for us to kind of help them understand what we're asking them to do. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yes, that does. That helps a lot. Are we ready for a motion, Mr. Mayor, or?
You know, we had just, we don't have to take public comment on this, I don't think. I think this is a pretty easy one. Is that correct, Carl? Give me a thumbs up if we're okay not taking public comment. All right. Yeah, I'd love a motion, Shelley.
Okay, I would move that we pass resolution 2020-22 regarding adopting the fats, oils, and grease policy.
Set Paula. Paula had the second. All right. Shelley moved, Paula seconded. Any further conversation? Nope. Catherine, please take roll. You're all unmuted.
Catherine.
Sorry, I was on mute still. Okay, Willman?
I am clicking this button like crazy, Charlie.
That's because you won't let me talk. I'm getting offended by all this.
Voorhees?
Yes.
Goldus?
Yes.
Davis?
Yes.
Hershey?
Yes.
Cope?
Yes.
Depp?
Yes. Motion
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you. Hey guys, we are running pretty far behind tonight. If there's general agreement, would everybody be okay if we moved item number 13, the review of multimodal options for a vibrant economy study, the MOVE study? That's going to be a decent length presentation, and I'd love to have us all fresh to be able to hear about it and ask questions. So is there give me a thumbs up if we're okay delaying that. I've communicated with Terry and she's okay moving that as well. All right. Sorry, Terry, that you had to wait around 3 hours for us to tell you that's just going to be continued. We really appreciate your dedication and your patience with us. Let's see. Rick, you had your hand up. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, just real quick, you know, when we get to the multimodal discussion, is that something we'd want to invite planning and zoning to hear as well? Maybe in a work session, something like that?
You know, I think that they were working through the Transportation Commission, but
oh yeah, them too.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I don't know what the process is as far as engaging other boards and commissions. So I guess I'll defer to
as Shelley
Terry.
mentioned, the Transportation Commission has already reviewed this.
Yeah, they did. And Shelley is on on our focus group committee. So we've had a pretty thorough discussion at the Transportation Commission. But I do think it's great to have the Planning Commission see it. It is a pretty important study for the city. So maybe we could try to schedule it for an upcoming work session. I'll try to see if we have that time available for our next meeting.
Just a suggestion. It might help to, get other people on board, get some ownership. So.
I agree.
Cool. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate that clarification. All right. What are we doing next? We are on item 12, ordinance 15, series 2020, ordinance City Council amending sections of Title 070 of the Municipal Code to address errors that require correction and provisions that need clarification or modifications in the Land Use Code. First reading. Who is presenting on this? Ms. Uten? No, Ms. Reisel.
Evening. Hold on, I'm trying to share my screen here. Got things in the way. There we go. Beginning. Okay. Oops. All right. So in August 2018, we adopted a new land use development code. But as we continue to apply it to real development proposals, we find errors that need correction and provisions that need clarification. We also find certain requirements that need amendment based on our interactions with folks in the development community. So we have developed a fairly lengthy list of revisions and amendments, but the amendments under consideration tonight are just those priority items. These are corrections that are fairly simple, such as spelling and formatting errors, or items that, yes, sorry.
Nope, sorry, we lost you for like a second and a half, but go ahead. Just that, you're great.
No, it's my internet connection. It's pretty unstable. So I'm going to quickly summarize the more pertinent amendments that we propose tonight. First, we propose amending the use table, specifically the new code. It makes no distinction between small and large manufacturing businesses. For example, an upholsterer is in the same category with a bottling plant. And so we propose creating a specific category called craft manufacturing, which is designed for the smaller light manufacturers. It would be allowed in the the commercial and industrial zoning districts. And then we propose making 2 amendments to the sign code. First, we propose eliminating the electronic message centers, which was a direction that we had heard from you all probably back to maybe even 3 months ago now. Then we also would like to add a category called non-visible signs to the list of signs that do not require a permit. And these would be intended for large complexes where you can't really see signs from a public right-of-way. So an example would be Valley View Hospital, Hot Springs Pool, Iron Mountain Hot Springs. Let's see. Oh, there's other miscellaneous amendments. We propose revising the storage requirements for multifamily developments. Specifically, the current requirement is just a flat 100 square feet required of storage per unit. So our proposed amendment actually creates a cubic foot requirement, which gives you credit for the ceiling height. We base this on Carbondale, its code, and I've not heard any complaints about that. And we actually tested it out on a recent development and received no complaints from the developer at all. So that was helpful. Then we also propose revising landscaping requirements. We had an issue with the industrial zoning districts. The current code requires that 20% of their site be reserved for landscaping, whereas in the commercial zone districts, it's 10 and 15%. So we felt that the industrial zones were in fact being somewhat penalized. So we propose going to a 10% requirement. And then also we've had some fairly silly issues with the the current code requiring an incredible amount of shrubs and perennials. And so we basically propose returning to the old code requirements. And in my staff report and the Planning and Zoning Commission staff report, I provided examples of what those requirements would be based on existing recent developments. And then also we propose broadening the landscaping options in parking areas. We would like to allow things called bioswales or rain gardens or continuous landscape strips. We've had some very good experience with 2 recent parking lot developments for Valley View Hospital. They're standalone parking, and they've used bioswales, and they've actually been quite a success. So, and they had to get a variance to do those. So we'd like to avoid folks. We'd like to provide them with the option of having bioswales. And then finally, like I said, we need to add the definitions for craft manufacturing to the development code. And then Planning and Zoning Commission specifically asked for a definition of bioswale. And this one, quite honestly, I think it's out of the current Webster's dictionary. So felt that it described it pretty well. So the Planning and Zoning Commission considered these proposed amendments at a public hearing held on May 5th. And the commission unanimously approved the amendments with clarifications that have been added to the ordinance that is under consideration tonight. So I request that you approve on first reading Ordinance 15, which adopts the recommended changes to Title 070, those code amendments. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and take any questions that you might have.
Paula, you are unmuted already.
Already, that's great. Gretchen, my biggest concern is the changing the storage availability. We're approving small units. We just approved almost 90 units in one building that was all 1-bedroom and studio apartments, and we don't have storage in these locations. That means that we have to build storage units in town or out of town. And we don't have land space to build housing in town. There's plenty out of town. And I'm just concerned that we're saying, you know what, if you have an 800 square foot unit, that, you know, you only need a 256 cubic feet for storage for your extra stuff, whether it's a bicycle and your paddleboard or boxes of books. It doesn't matter. That's not a lot of space. When you look down to something as small as a studio apartment with maybe as much as 650 square feet, you only have to have 216 cubic feet of storage space. And I'm just concerned that the repercussions of just allowing, number one, we're doing small units, you know, we're looking for density, and then all of a sudden we're like, okay, now we're gonna have to go out of that area. So is there any way that we can add to that? Because before, these people had 10 by 10 spaces to work with, have their extra.
I think the problem was with the way the code was written, that there was no distinction between a large unit and a small unit. So we can certainly, between now, if you're comfortable, we could either pull this item from the amendments and then work for some middle ground or add additional requirements for storage, or I can work on it and see if I can come up with something kind of middle of the ground, more than what it is now, or more than the recommendation, but a little bit less than what the current code requires. Either way, I'm fine working on it.
I would like to see that happen.
Okay.
For that, you know, for just, like I said, for all my comments already made.
No, I agree. If for example, if you drive past the lofts, sometimes you see the paddle boards out on the decks, and I've gotten complaints from folks about that the balconies aren't really supposed to be used for that purpose. So Yeah, let me work on it and see what I can do.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right. Questions, Rick?
Hey, Gretchen, thank you. I just had sort of a kind of a bounding question, I guess, with the craft designation. At what point would they no longer be considered craft businesses? I mean, a certain volume, and I'm thinking of, Myers Skis had to eventually, they weren't in town, but they had to move out because they got so big, and I didn't know if we had a cap on the size of the square footage or number of employees, and I'm not even sure it would make sense to do that, but I'd be just interested in what your thinking might be. I think I might have ended her internet connection somehow.
Sorry.
No worries.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Okay, so, and I apologize, you cut out for just a wee bit there. I'm thinking that you asked me about, where's the split between a small craft manufacturer and then when it gets too big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there really is one,
Okay.
to be honest with you. I think I looked at some other codes and they actually had, caps on the number of deliveries, the square footage of the commercial unit or industrial unit, the square footage of the building that they occupied. So I can certainly take a look at adding some of that. And I'm good to do that too.
Well, I don't know if it's mandatory. I was just curious if there was some limit. I'm not trying to create more work for you. And I think probably the problem would take care of itself by just the person inside those four walls deciding that they needed bigger space. But just a small late interjection.
Well, no, and that's fair. I had actually considered that sort of at the last hour as a possibility of adding a square footage cap on what we considered as craft manufacturing. I can take a look at it again, truly, if you would like. Be happy to do that.
Yeah, I don't know that it's mandatory. I mean, it could be, sort of a sticky wicket when you say, well, like a small craft beer manufacturer needs X square feet, and somebody that's making skis or, having a custom welding shop needs X square feet. And I don't think we want to get into that. That sounds like it'd be.
All right, well, certainly we can, if it looks like this isn't going to work, we certainly can amend the code again.
Okay. Thanks, Gretchen, for all your hard work.
Sure.
Thanks, Rick. Shelley, you are unmuted.
Okay. Hi, Gretchen. Thanks for all of this cleanup and everything else. But I had a quick question on the electronic message signs. And are those boards that are basically like video or LED screens and
They are.
Okay.
Yes.
Are they going to be allowed anywhere?
No.
Even, like, on a building. So do we need something that, I mean, I understand just scratching the language out of them, but seeing as they're like a new technology, and I think some of the businesses like them because they're eye-catching, do we need something that specifically says they are not allowed? Or I didn't see that being added. Just curious.
No, I did not state that they were not allowed, but we can add them to the prohibited signs.
Oh, okay, that might be.
Right.
I think that would work there.
That's a good point, actually.
Okay.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thanks.
All right. Well, I'll make that cleanup then before if this goes to second reading, I'll make that cleanup.
And I would agree with you, Shelley, on that as well.
Okay.
That's my 2 cents. Any other questions, comments? I thought this was going to fly by. All right. So what do we want to do? Do we want to pass this on first reading and then get the cleanup version for second reading, or do we have enough changes that we want to bring it back and see the revised document? I'm looking for some guidance here. Paula, you're unmuted.
I would move to pass this with the exceptions of what Gretchen has said she can work on. I know that I'm not sure with what I requested that Gretchen could include that in the second reading, or that would take a separate second reading. So I guess I need clarification on that.
Carl, just give me a thumbs up. I think we can have that on second reading, can we? Okay. If that's the case, then I'll look for a motion. I'm sorry, Paula, are you done?
No, I was going to then say. The
Okay.
motion. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, great.
There we go. I would make a motion that we would pass Ordinance 15, Series of 2020, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Glenwood Springs, Colorado, amending sections of Title 070 of the Municipal Code to address errors that require correction and provisions that need clarification or modification in the Land Use Code with the changes requested during this meeting.
Is there a second, Charlie?
Paula, would that motion include that it's upholding the planning and zoning recommendation to make those changes?
Yes.
If so, I second it.
Oh, you know what? This is an ordinance, and so we need to take public comment. So
there we go.
thank you. Okay, before we bring it to a vote, anybody from the public want to speak on this? All right, seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the table. Any further discussion? I'm unmuting all. So now you can unmute everybody yourself. Catherine, could you take a roll?
Catherine is muted.
No, I'm not. Okay, Godus,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Hershey,
No.
Depp,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Willman,
Yes.
Voorhees,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right. The next item, we've given a thumbs up to move this to the July 2nd meeting. So let's go to item number 14. This is the collaboration agreement with Garfield County BOCC for CARES funding for COVID-19 response discussion and or action. Deborah.
Thank you. You have an agreement before you that is with Garfield County. It is for CARES Act funding for COVID-19 response. The state of Colorado got is releasing $275 million for local governments. Of that, Garfield County is going to get just over $5 million, and using a population determination, we would be eligible for $863,509.81. Now, this money cannot be used for revenue losses. It's got to be used, and it is a little fuzzy. It has got to be used for COVID-19 direct expenses. Examples of what it can be used for are loans or grants to businesses, providing food to like Lift Up. We can get reimbursed, I believe, for what we have already spent on those costs. I was planning on bringing you back more ideas at the next meeting so you could talk about it. It's a little unclear so far on, how we go about drawing down this money, but we do know it's for expenses from March until December of this year. So we have time but the agreement needs to get approved if you guys are okay with it, and we need to get it in, to the county and then also get it into the system with DOLA. So there will be much more discussion on how we should spend these funds.
Any questions for Deborah? Charlie, you're up. I think I muted you. Now you're unmuted.
I don't have any question. I would move to approve the the collaboration agreement with Garfield County Board of County Commissioner for CARES funding for COVID-19 response.
I would second our family attorney. All right, it's been moved by Charlie, seconded by myself. Any more conversation, discussion? Seeing none, I'm unmuting everybody. I'm paying particularly quick attention to Paula and Steve Davis, but Catherine, can you call roll?
Voorhees,
Voorhees says yes.
Hershey,
Hershey says yes.
Stepp,
Yes.
Davis,
Davis says yes.
Willman,
If it's a cohabitation agreement, yeah, I'll say
No,
yes.
I'm not cohabitating with Charlie.
I know, I was kidding. Yes.
Yes.
Godis.
Godis says yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right. Next item is item 15 has been moved to continue to the July 2nd regular meeting, has been moved there. The only thing we have left is city manager community center updates.
Before Brian jumps onto that, I just wanted to let you guys know that we are planning on adding a prohibition of fireworks to our current burn ban to match what the county has done.
Tony, you're unmuted.
I ask a quick recreation question. My understanding is all the playgrounds, Deborah, are open, but I noticed the one at Axtell Park still had a little sign on it. Was that an oversight or is that one still closed?
If Brian is getting on, I would let him answer that. I don't believe it's still closed, but
I just saw a sign yesterday, but maybe it's gone now. I didn't see it today. Thank you.
All right. Brian, you are allowed to talk.
All right, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we have reopened all of our playgrounds. If we have any more signage out there, that's just an oversight. We'll be collecting all those. I think we have gotten all those now, but we'll make sure to do a run through and any signage that we have at the playgrounds now are not closure signs. They're just public safety notice that they're used at your own risk because we are not actively disinfecting and cleaning those. We're just letting people know that playgrounds are up to 10 people and to practice social distancing and just to use at your own risk because we aren't actively disinfecting those. We're letting Mother Nature and sunlight clean those as we go along. We have also reopened the recreation center that has 90-minute fitness sessions in 3 areas. We also have 45-minute lap lane swimming. All the sessions are by reservation only. Those need to happen online, and our staff can help out with that. The reopening has gone well. We are asking the public to wear masks when they come in and leave the facility when they're interacting with staff. Otherwise, it's up to their discretion, depending on the workout that they're doing. And we are right now having talks with some of the other municipalities around the area on sports leagues. The last county variance did not allow for any team sports, but those guidelines are being updated currently. We reopened all of our park reservations and pavilions. Special event permitting is open again. Group sizes are up to 50 and up to 25 for recreation programming. We still have public restrooms closed currently. The art center is still closed. We're not doing large scale community events, although we have a number of different events that we are partnering with different agencies looking at here for the summer. We have a few things in the works for 4th of July. And then later in the summer, a couple more activations for downtown. And we hope to have Oktoberfest on the books as well. So we are right in the middle of our kind of our first major reopening phase. The next thing we'll be looking at is fitness programming and sports programming. And we hope to be able to have something here in the next month.
Brian, thank you so much. Steve, you're unmuted.
Question for Brian. This is Steve Davis sitting in the dark, and I'm just wondering about if you have any thoughts about public restrooms, when that might happen.
Yeah, public restrooms are allowed to reopen, at least according to the state guidelines. However, we just don't have the staffing right now. We were supplementing our park staff with our recreation facility staff, but now that we have reopened the community center, we've had to pull back some of those employees to help manage that. We effectively, let go of about 120 staff in our department alone, in part-time employees. So that's a huge void. And while some of that's program related, there's quite a bit of that is directly responsible for operations of the community center and for park maintenance. So we're operating the whole park system with a handful of staff, and until we can, until the world's at a place where we feel comfortable with a daily cleaning, or until we have the ability to schedule staff to do frequent cleanings of the restrooms, those will remain closed. But we're looking to address that staffing issue along with the programming and other things that we're doing.
And I can guarantee you guys that Brian is pushing us to rehire people. It's just, we have to be really careful with our budget.
Yeah, I appreciate that. These are really hard decisions, and as much as I need Tiffany and Sharma back in my life as fitness instructors at the rec center, I do appreciate the very thoughtful, measured approach that everybody's taking. So are there any other questions for Brian or Deborah? Shelley.
I would just like to add on too, I guess I'd like to see maybe an estimate or something of what it would cost to get if we could get our park and public restrooms open, just because as use picks up, even if we have to contract that out or something, as we see more people in town, more use in town, the public restrooms downtown, the ones at the new boat ramp, things like that, I think are a very important piece of health and sanitation, along with, I realize it's extra budget, but I think it's part of the health and safety piece of it. So I'd like to see us try to get those open if we can. Just agreeing with Steve.
Peter, I'm kind of beginning to sort through all those numbers, Shelley, and it will just take us a little while, and then we need to try to make decisions on what might pay for itself too and what might not. And I hear you.
Yeah, and I don't know if the extra cleaning could be paid for as part from some of this CARES funding, but maybe that's an option if it's extra cleaning above and beyond the norm.
Okay, Steve Davis.
Well, I just want to, throw out kudos certainly to everybody on staff for continuing to operate as short-staffed as we are. And I understand all those issues that we have doing that. I think you guys are all doing a great job, and it's almost seamless. There's just very few places in the community where you just kind of have to stop and go, what about that? And And I think as we look at those bathrooms, there's only two that stick out at me, and that's the downtown and the Two Rivers Park. I certainly wouldn't suggest that we immediately try to figure out how to open every bathroom, Extell Park, and all these other bathrooms around town, but those two seem to be particularly useful. Two Rivers is brand new, and I can't wait to get in there, but you know, I think that maybe we should look at, you know, how to farm that out to an independent contractor to clean them and get those two open anyway. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions, comments for Brian?
Great job, Brian. Thank you.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Thank you. Appreciate your support.
All right. All right. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for staying around so late and delivering that report to us. City Attorney, anything good for the order?
I don't think I have anything for you this evening, Mr. Mayor.
That's fantastic.
Mayor, may I comment something? I'd like to congratulate Mr. Hanlon. As I heard him say earlier, this is his 9th wedding anniversary. And thank you for being here with us. And I hope you had a good dinner with your wife.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And congratulations on a fantastic debate performance tonight as well. So good job on that. All right. The next one. Sorry, Tony, are you stretching or do you have a hand up? Okay. You're unmuted. No, you're not unmuted. You're stretching. Okay. Gotcha. All right. Hey, maybe a little better higher end deodorant would be better someday as well. All right. Charlie, we have a letter to CML to endorse you for the executive board.
Yes, as you know, last year I applied for the executive board and didn't get elected. I applied again this year, and it's not a given, but it's probably close to a given because there's 4 applicants and 4 openings. So, but I do need the formal endorsement of the city council. We had to do this kind of last minute, and so we didn't get it done ahead of time.
So I move that we endorse Charlie for the CML Executive Board.
Second.
Been moved by Rick, seconded by Paula. Let's do this so I don't have to unmute everybody. If you're not 100% in favor, say aye. Great, it passes unanimously.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Hey, Charlie, thank you very much for doing this. And oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Did you have a comment on that? No. Okay. Charlie, thank you very much for doing that. It's really great to have Glenwood Springs voice and then the Western Slope and Resort Town voice on that committee. So I really appreciate you doing that and taking the extra time and energy that it's going to require. So thank you very much on behalf of all of us.
I think it's real important.
Now I'm unmuted. So I just wanted to also express my appreciation to Charlie for doing that. I know that job probably doesn't pay any better than this job does. So
I think it's lower.
no, it's a great thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That's the last item on tonight's agenda. Does anybody else have anything for the good of the order? All right. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
You.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Good meeting.